Class is in session, hitting the books. Pub Sports Radio, Monday, October the 16th. Ian Cameron and Conor Mack ready to tackle another week of college football betting action. It's hard to believe that we're in mid-October already. We got basically a month and a half left of the college football regular season. So it's just amazing, year in and year out, how fast things fly by in this sport. But we're ready for another big week. We've got another smorgasbord buffet, if you will, of Conference USA midweek college football action here on the weeknight slate, part of the new television deal that the conference struck with their partners, ESPN and CBS Sports Network. That's where pretty much all these games are. So we'll start with three Conference USA games, I should say, on Tuesday night, starting with Middle Tennessee State and Liberty. We've got Liberty Bibberty here, 14 and a half point home favorites, 55 being the total in this game. Liberty got back on track last week in a very big way. We think this is one of the better teams in the conference. Certainly I do. And last week against Jacksonville State, it was a very, very impressive showing from Liberty. They kind of looked a little off their game the week before against Sam Houston State. You know, the game they just barely survived and won 21-16, but they got back to dominance last week, 31-13 over Jacksonville State. Very impressed by the defense, shutting down that up-tempo, run-oriented spread that Rich Rodriguez puts out there with the Gamecocks, and Liberty did a great job shutting that down. We'll see how they fare here against Middle Tennessee State, who did bounce back and snap their three-game losing streak last week with a 31-23 win over Louisiana Tech. Certainly was a step in the right direction for the offense, which had really struggled, especially with committing too many turnovers. Nicholas Vadiato did a better job protecting the ball in that win against Louisiana Tech. I don't know if I want to step in front of Liberty. It's obviously you got to lay 2 touchdowns, but if you look at this Middle Tennessee team, when they've been asked to face some better teams on their resume this year, they haven't fared well. You look at going back to Alabama. The one game they were competitive in it was Missouri, but let's not forget it. Western Kentucky, a few weeks ago, they lost 31-10. They get drilled by 2 touchdowns at home against Jacksonville State, a team that Liberty just beat 31-13. So we have that common opponent, right? Liberty just beat Jacksonville State 31-13. Middle Tennessee lost to Jacksonville State 45-30. You know, so for me, this is probably Liberty or pass. Don't know if I'll lay the points, but I lean in that direction. It's a really good football team. Caden Salter at quarterback, good run game, good defense, very well coached by Jamie Chadwell, who did a great job at Coastal and now is showing that he's looking to do a great job. So far has done a great job year one here at Liberty. Liberty or pass, not sure I'll lay it, but I lean that way. Conor, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you have to look that way. Just lay the points or stay off the game here with Liberty. I mean, I got to pull it up here. Everything. Is there 14s everywhere?
Pretty much 14. Moving to 14 and a half now, actually.
Yeah,
the last
okay.
hour or so. Yep.
Yeah, if you could have got in at the 13 and a half, I think was pretty good. Just 2 teams on opposite ends. Middle Tennessee, finally gets a win, but this team's been bad. Not only lose, they're bad ATS. They're not a team you want to back. They're not a team that loses and can cover for you. So that's the reason not to take them. And Liberty has been money. They just keep winning football games, covering spreads. Last week, we talked about how good the defense is. And that's what I think could keep them and cover this number here. 6-1 ATS their last 7. As much as you want to lay it, I usually don't lay both, but I look at the under just because Liberty's defense is pretty good. How much can Middle Tennessee score with this offense? That's not very good. So those are my 2 leans here early on this one.
All right. And by the way, Liberty's established themselves. I think it's pretty much them, Western Kentucky, and maybe Jacksonville State still in the mix. I know they only lost their first conference game last week against Liberty. I'd still say Jacksonville State's in the mix here in Conference USA. But to me, I think it's going to come down to Liberty and Western Kentucky. Those, to me, look like the 2 best teams here in Conference USA right now. I'm looking forward to seeing them play each other. That would be one heck of a game. Speaking of Western Kentucky, they're next up, and they're going on the road to take on Jacksonville State. So this should be a really good game. Of the Tuesday, Wednesday Conference USA games, this is without a doubt, the best game. There's no question. Western Kentucky, Jacksonville State. We got Western Kentucky, 7-point road favorites, 60 the total here in this game. I took a shot with Jacksonville State against Liberty because they were cashing for me week in and week out. They were playing good football. I loved that, they'd fall behind in games and they would have that resolve and they'd battle back and they wouldn't give up and they'd come back and beaten so many teams. But they ran up against a Liberty team that once they fell behind last week, there was no comeback for Jacksonville State, which just shows you how good Liberty is right now. Against Western Kentucky, if Jacksonville State, now this has been an issue. Like, I think if you like Jacksonville State, obviously you would like them full game, but don't be scared maybe to just don't bet at pregame, wait till halftime, because we have seen slow starts out of Jacksonville State more than once this year, and they've been a second half machine in so many games. And I guess you got to give Rich Rodriguez credit for that, where they've played so much of their best football, in the second half beyond halftime. I lean Jacksonville State here. I have personally Liberty a little bit better than Western Kentucky, especially on the defensive side of the football. I think Liberty's just a little bit better on defense than Western Kentucky. Western Kentucky with Austin Reed at quarterback. We know the passing game is very, very critical to their success. They don't run the football a lot. And when you look at the matchup and the way it sets up here for this Jacksonville State defense, their run defense is very good. The pass defense, not quite. So I am a little worried, that Austin Reed-led passing game for Western Kentucky might get going here a little bit, because I think Jacksonville State's defensive strength is against the run more so than the pass. On the flip side, if Jacksonville State going to play fast, going to play up tempo, going to be run heavy. That's the way they've always been with their quarterbacks who can both run, whether it's Webb or whether it's Smothers. And, of course, they have a good run game as well. They're not a great passing team. The good news for them is Western Kentucky's not a great run defense here, giving up almost 200 rushing yards per game and almost 5 yards per carry. So not a very good run defense here from Western Kentucky. I think this game might be a little bit of a shootout here, because you would think the offensive strength of Western Kentucky will work against the greater defensive weakness of Jack State, which is the pass defense. And just on the flip side, the Jacksonville State offensive strength should work against the weaker defensive part of Western Kentucky, which is stopping the run. So I think both teams play well to their offensive strengths, take advantage and exploit the defensive weakness of the other team. So the over, I think, might be in play here at 60 and a half, and I lean to the home dog as well. Connor, what do you think here? A good matchup in CUSA, Western Kentucky, Jacksonville State.
It is. Western Kentucky has been good against the number. We've talked about it for a while, since last year. Obviously, Austin Reed's very good, and they'll be able to throw it. But I want to take the home team. After they finally lose, so they get a couple road wins, Jacksonville State, they come home, obviously, to Liberty and lose, where some people – I stayed off. I was just on the under. But I like this. Get the 7 here. There's been a few times. It was the Western Kentucky versus La Tech. But that was a 6, and that just kept me from not wanting to bet it. I got bit by Hawaii this weekend with the 6. When I talked about on the show in the morning, I really want a 7.5 to feel a lot better. I think you do here, because I think Jacksonville State can run on Western Kentucky. Whether it gets over, I don't know. I'm not going to mess with that, but I think you take the points here. Western Kentucky laying this on the road. I think it's a bounce back, staying at home here for Jacksonville State in a close one. So I'll take the points.
There is one thing to keep in mind and be very leery of here for Jacksonville State. Both quarterbacks got banged up and got injured last week against Liberty in that 31-13 loss, and they're questionable, both of them, as of this video, as of this show. And I'm talking about, of course,
I think we just need one. So
yeah.
as long as one of them, because it's a
Smothers. And you know what? They're all interchangeable. They can't really throw the ball all that well, either of them. Zion Webb and Logan Smothers. Their strength is running it, both of these guys. And the guy that would play, if neither of them is available, is a kid named Ashton Fry. And if you actually look at his, high school track record, same kind of quarterback as the other two. Not the greatest thrower, but he's got terrific dual threat capability, can run with the football, very athletic. So it's kind of one of those deals where if they're without one or both of those quarterbacks, they have to go to the third string QB, making his first start Fry. It's not like they're totally lost on offense. It's like a plug and play thing. The guy's not the most polished pocket passer in the world, but he can do what Rich Rod wants him to do, mobility from the quarterback position, which has always been, the Rich Rod way with this offense that he's had, going back to all the different places he's coached. So I would say, even if it is Fry, they're down to the QB3, it still wouldn't take me completely off the opinions of Jacksonville State and probably a higher scoring game, because I still think they're going to be able to run the ball. And I think Western can pass on this Jacksonville State defense on the flip side as well. All right, the third game on Tuesday night, we have Southern Miss and South Alabama. South Alabama now up to 18 and a half point home favorites, 53 being the total in this game. I mean, if you're going to take Southern Miss in this game, C-Mac, you're taking a team that didn't score an offensive touchdown last week. And there's been multiple. Their touchdown was on a punt return. I mean, that is what we're talking about here with Southern Miss. And look, their defense hung in there. I still had to sweat it out with the bet that I mentioned last week. I loved Old Dominion as a small dog against Southern Miss, and it was still not an easy one. In fact, we needed a goal line stand from the Old Dominion defense late in the fourth quarter to have that 17-13 win hold up. But we got it. That's all that matters. And really, it's just an inept offense last week for Southern Miss, which is surprising because we just saw that team rack up 37 against Arkansas State, although admittedly a pretty bad defense. 36 against Texas State. That's a better defense. So it was surprising to see that Southern Miss offense, really struggle like that. Billy Wiles has been very erratic throwing the football. It's one of those teams that if they can't run the football, they're really not going to do much on offense. And running the football has been a problem for Southern Miss. They're only averaging 3.9 yards per pop running the football this year. And they're facing a South Alabama defense here that, as we know, can stop the run. A defense that's pretty good overall. Now, they did have their tough two tough games in a row where that defense struggled, but Central Michigan and James Madison, I don't mind them struggling there because James Madison's got a terrific offense this year. So South Alabama getting carved up by them is not I'm not totally worried by that. They got back on track in their last game. They held UL Monroe to 7 points, a 55-7 beatdown for South Alabama over UL Monroe. This is one of those games where it feels like it's a lot of points. Southern Miss has been able to hang in a couple of these games. They only lost by 7 against Arkansas State. The loss to Texas State was 14. The loss to Old Dominion last week was 4. The loss to Tulane was 18. If they lose by those margins in this game, you're cashing a ticket with Southern Miss, getting 18 and a half in this game. So it feels like this to me is hold your nose and take a shot with Southern Miss. I just feel it's a little inflated here to lay this many with South Alabama. They probably win the game, but not comfortable in this price range with them. What do you think here, C-Max? Southern Miss, South Alabama.
Yeah, can they stay in this number? Because it's just depending on the number, they haven't been able to cover. Southern Miss, all those games you mentioned, they're 0-5. It's just like they just can't get a cover. But this is a boatload of points. I think South Alabama hasn't played well all year, and then to go, a Monroe team that could, surprise some people, especially at home, and they just blew them out the water a couple of weeks ago. So they're off the bye. I think they win. I don't want to lay the points here in this game. Initially, I did, can Southern Miss score a little bit with their horrible offense? Because you mentioned those 2 games, they got the points, but any other team, they weren't able to score. Can they get there? Because maybe this game could get over. But for now, I want nothing to do with it.
Yeah, it's a tricky game. I don't think I'll get involved, but I feel like Southern Miss, and look, I don't normally like betting teams that haven't covered ATS this season. They haven't covered against an FBS opponent this year, Southern Miss. I think they actually covered in their first game, but that was against a FCS opponent. Yes, Alcorn State. They haven't covered a point spread, though, against an FBS opponent, but it feels like it's a lot of points. It really does. And South Alabama's not been that level of consistency one game to the next that we've seen in years past. And to be honest with you, Carter Bradley, the Toledo transfers, their quarterback, he's kind of been up and down this year. 5 interceptions. That's not like him. He's a very experienced quarterback. Now, he has had 11 touchdowns. He did have a huge game against UL Monroe. Still, I think, and LaDamian Webb's an outstanding running back for South Bama as well. They can throw it. They can run it. They're going to really challenge Southern Miss, but it is a lot of points. And keep in mind, last year's meeting between these two teams decided by 7. It was a 27-20 victory for South Alabama last year when these two teams played. So it was a relatively competitive game. So, yeah, it's a small lean to the dog here. hold your nose and bet them.
Can they run it? Can Frank Gore Jr. Can they?
Yep.
Which I know he's been dealing with some stuff, but it just hasn't been great so far this year.
No, he's
Can
been
they hang
not.
around?
And this is a guy that carried them offensively last year in particular. But you look at what he's done. He had no running room against Old Dominion. 2.3 yards per carry is what they averaged with Frank Gore running the football against Old Dominion. If that happens again here, they're in trouble against South Alabama. So they got to get that run game going a little bit better than last week. All right, let's move to Wednesday night. Florida International, Sam Houston State. We've got Sam Houston State, 5-point home favorites. 40.5 being the total in this game. Man, I'll tell you what, you talk about a team that gravely disappointed me last week. Really, really, really stunning to see how bad they started, and they dug themselves too much of a hole. I give them credit, and Mike McIntyre's team credit for fighting and competing hard in the second half, but they were just out of it too. I mean, you cannot just have that bad of a first quarter, even against a team like UTEP. And expect to win the game. Very disappointing because that was a weeknight home game, televised game. You don't see that often for Florida International, and they just got off to a wretched start. That's now 0-3 straight up, 0-3 against the spread now for Florida International in their last 3 games. 38-6 loss to Liberty, 34-17 loss on the road against New Mexico State. That was a game that was competitive for a while, and then it kind of fell apart for FIU in the second half. And then last week it fell apart early. I mean, what were they down, like 21-0 or something right off the shoot against UTEP, and they just couldn't recover from that. They lose 27-14. The offense, to me, they're still work in progress still. They sacked Grayson James down. They went to Kewan Jenkins at quarterback instead. He's still a very raw quarterback as far as passing, only 50% completions, no touchdowns, 1 interception, 216 through the air, and that's against a bad UTEP team last week. So that bothers me now. You're going on the road, and the one thing Sam Houston's had this year at times is a solid defense that kind of didn't play their best against New Mexico State, but it's also a defense that really shut down Liberty for the second half and kept them in that game. And we know how much we like Liberty. So they've kind of been Jekyll and Hyde lately. Start the season with 2 terrific defensive efforts against Air Force and BYU, and then they get ripped apart by Jacksonville State and Houston. And then Liberty, they play well, and then they kind of regress a bit and take a step back last week against New Mexico State. But when they're on their game, Sam Houston State's defense is capable of keeping them in games. The problem is you've got to trust this Keegan Shoemaker quarterback and this offense laying points, and I'm not ready to do that with Sam Houston State in that offense. I'm just not ready. I'm not at the point where, let's lay 5 with this offense of Sam Houston State. No, I'm not at that point. And they are riddled at the running back spot with injuries. Zach Herbacek, John Gentry, Landon Brown, Charles Crawford. That's running back 1 through 4 on their depth chart. They're all questionable for this football game against FIU. So that's not what you want to see. I lean FIU again. Maybe I'm a glutton for punishment. They let me down so much last week, but it would be FIU or nothing for me at this number. What do you think, C-Mac?
Yeah, I don't know if I can take them. I don't know if I really want both of these teams.
Losing the UTEP is not a ringing endorsement of your football team. Yes, that's true.
Yeah, when we'll get to UTEP, they just got just like slapped, like bitch slapped right away, and you're just down 21-0, and that was just it. That seemed like the rest of the game, and they just cruised. Jenkins, 12 of 24, same old shit. He threw 200 yards, a pick. The offenses are very good. They're deep. I think you look under. We have a low total here, though. I mean, I don't see how there's going to be a shootout in this one. Shoemaker's been a little bit better. They're at home. But I don't want to lay, basically a touchdown here to win with Sam Houston at all, too. So I lean a little bit to the under, even at 40.
Yeah, this is one of those totals where after what I've seen from FIU's defense, it may feel a little low, but it might be a little high with what you've seen from Sam Houston here. I mean, to me, on Kong's Clips, I'm right with you in our chat. And shout out to everyone in our chat. Kong's Clips, Hirsch, Ian Shaber, Nunya, Rance, Ronnie and Bergia. Let me see who else we've got here. Wine Time Sports, Dabby Cab did a great job. I put that on my TV earlier when I was prepping for the show. Dabby Cab, Dutch, Mike M.
Sesh. Check it out.
Trot Wham. Always. They were all on the sesh earlier. Good show. Good shit. The Czar, Real Deal Prime. TJ Burks, Bloodman, and a new member to the channel, Bloodman. We appreciate it. Shout out to everyone in the chat. All right, let's move along to the other game Wednesday, New Mexico State, UTEP. We've got New Mexico State 1-point road favorites up to 3 now, 48.5 the total. This is a game that I agree with the move because I bet it myself. I took New Mexico State here at around a pick 'em against UTEP. It's moved up to 3 now. There's even a 3.5, I believe, showing up at Bet Online, a couple other books. So if you like New Mexico State, bet it sooner rather than later. But I ain't giving UTEP too much credit, for that win last week. That was Florida International shooting themselves in the foot. Lots of mistakes, horrible defense. I don't trust UTEP just yet. They're going to have to show it to me again. And that being said, we had a quarterback change last week for UTEP. It was mostly, and it wasn't because of performance, because I believe Gavin Hardison he had an arm injury. That's why he didn't play last week against New Mexico. He didn't play actually last week against Florida International. They gave the start to Cade McConnell at quarterback last week for UMass, taking on FIU. You look at the way he played, and actually he played as well a little bit against Louisiana Tech. That's the game that Gavin Hardison got injured. But last week, 2 touchdowns, 262 passing yards. Didn't throw the football a ton because they led so early in the game, but he was efficient. 11 for 17, 65% completion rate. He actually looked better than Gavin Hardison. I shit you not. He did. Cade McConnell for UTEP last week at the quarterback spot. They actually looked like they had some explosiveness back in their offense. Maybe that's a positive sign. Let's see. Is Hardison back? He's questionable. Dana Dimmel has been loyal as the day is long to Gavin Hardison since he's been there. So you got to think that if Hardison's healthy, he's playing. Though I'm not so sure that should be the case because Cade McConnell played very well last week for UTEP. But we'll see. And that's what I'm waiting on. I like New Mexico State either way. I don't usually love them on the road, but you're just asking them to win the game. And I like what I've seen from Diego Pavia. And the offense has been really, really good lately. They've been running the ball nicely. He is a dual threat quarterback. The passing game, he's gotten better throwing the ball as well. That I've noticed as well. 2 straight wins and covers. They've won 3 of their last 4 straight up in ATS at New Mexico versus Florida International. And again, against Sam Houston State, a 2-touchdown win, 27-13 last week for New Mexico State. This looks like a team that's coming together, playing good football. The defense is starting to get a little bit better as well. They've given up just 17 and 13 points in their last 2 games in those victories against FIU and Sam Houston State. I like New Mexico State here. I think they get the win. Even at 3, I probably wouldn't lay much more than 3, but you can still find 3s out there, and I still like the Aggies as long as you can get that number. If McConnell plays, I might jump on the over in this game because I look at UTEP's offense as better with McConnell compared to what I like. Hardison was a joke. Hardison was a disaster. McConnell at least gave me something last week. Good, efficient passing game to go with the run game. If he starts, I think I put a little checkbox beside some offensive improvement for UTEP. On the flip side, I still don't trust UTEP's defense. Okay, FIU made a lot of mistakes in that game. Let's not forget this is a UTEP defense that's also given up 38 to Northwestern, 45 to UNLV, 24 to a not-so-good Louisiana Tech offense. This is still not a defense I trust, and the total's reasonable. It's only 48.5. I think if McConnell plays for UTEP, I might jump on an over at that number as well in this game. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, we'll get to even if Hardison could come back. No way you play that guy. Like, no way. I think he won basically the job the rest of the way, at least to start next week. I mean, how could you not? This team hadn't won a game. It's usually because of Hardison and his mistakes. So I think you stick with McConnell in this one. You know, maybe it's right if it, but I think that was against FIU. He just came in hot. I look the other way. I look at the under in this game, 48.5.
Well, I don't want the over if it's Hardison. I'll tell you that. I'll tell you that right now.
I like the under even more. New Mexico State's played on. I thought their defense has been better because I mentioned it last week even that, they gave up some points early and I thought they'd be a lot better. I mean, look, they're playing FIU, Sam Houston. We're not talking about the best offenses here. But even in the Hawaii game, which they lost, you talked about on the road, I can't lay points with them. And it's not that I'm going crazy to back UTEP in this game. I'd lean their way. But I can't get to you. I have to see more McConnell, more of a bunch of stuff there. But if you get more than a field goal, I might look their way. But I definitely like the under in this game.
The one thing that's good for the under in this game is you got two teams that go slow as molasses on offense. Yeah. I mean, New Mexico State's draining the play clock right down to 5 seconds, 2 seconds, and the same thing for UTEP. I mean, the mirror images as far as pace is concerned. And that's definitely going to help you if you like the under here in this one. Two snails with Jerry Kill and Dana Dimmel, the two coaches here of these two teams. All right, we got James Madison and Marshall, Thursday night college football action. James Madison, 3.5-point road favorites, 52 the total here in this James Madison Marshall game. I'm really reluctant right now to step in front of this freight train that is James Madison right now. I mean, the Dukes have been absolutely spectacular. Undefeated on the season, 6-0 straight up. How good is Frank Cignetti, their head coach here, James Madison? He's done a great job. He's not going to be there very long, actually. This is a guy that's going to get a bigger job pretty soon, Frank Cignetti. The head coach here of this James Madison team. He's been absolutely terrific doing the job at the coaching spot. They've got a very good offense. No question about that. I'm mixing them up with the guy from Pitt. It's Kurt Cignetti's the head coach of James Madison. He's done a great job. There's no question about that. Their offense is just on fire right now. I mean, look at these recent results. They put up 45 against Utah State, 41 against Georgia Southern last week. What a spot that was, by the way. I laid it with James Madison against Georgia Southern. No sweat in that game. They won 41-13 at home. And then even against a very good defense of South Bama, they get put up a 31 spot in that game. You know what? Jordan McLeod, South Florida transfer. He was with South Florida. He was actually with Arizona for a bit. But, you look at his numbers this year for JMU, 64% completions, 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. The passing game has been good. He's a dual threat. He can run the football. He's got some athleticism. So Jordan McLeod has really been the spark here for this offense. And look, they had a good offense last year when they had Todd Centeio at quarterback. But I think it's gone even further, how much better they've gotten with James Madison at quarterback under McLeod. McLeod's been very strong. They have a good run game for the James Madison Dukes as well. You look at it, they've been able to run the ball, but the passing game has been solid. This Marshall defense just not very good. I think that is the one thing about Marshall that's really disheartening about this Thundering Herd team. Going back to Doc Holliday, Connor, we've been around long enough in this business and betting to know Doc Holliday and that era of Marshall football. Before he retired, his teams were always built on run the football, play great defense. You're not seeing a lot of great defense right now from the Marshall Thundering Herd. 41 allowed in a loss at Georgia State last week, 48 to NC State when they made the change to MJ Morris at quarterback, 35 to Old Dominion. They won that game, but pretty much only because they outscored ODU. Just not a very good defense. I think you're going to see points in this game. I'm a little surprised the total's in this low 50s range in this game. This is not that same Marshall defense. I understand maybe putting a Marshall game in the low 50s as far as the total is concerned. If you were talking about a defense from last year or 2 years ago or 3 years ago or any of those Doc Holliday coached Marshall defenses, this is not a good defense. And I have seen it now 3 weeks in a row. They can't get stops on that side of the football. They are offensively capable. Cam Fancher, is a capable enough quarterback. They've got some balance in their offense. Rashid Ali, of course, very, very solid run game with him at the running back spot. Caleb Coombs, a good receiver. They should be able to score a little bit too. I think the total is the way to go here, 52. Now, I'm just going to look up the weather for Thursday. I'm seeing if maybe that's why.
A little bit of wind.
Just a little bit of wind. I don't know if it's going to be damaging enough to talk me off and over, but certainly that's the way I would lean. And James Madison's a good defensive team. They really are, and they've shown it. But that offense is just so good right now. 36-plus points for JMU in all but one game. And the only game that they were held below 30 points was Troy. And Troy's got probably the best defense, in this conference. It's Conference USA, without a doubt. So there's no shame in James Madison struggling a little on offense in that game against a pretty good Troy defense. Yeah, so I like over the total. And I'm not stepping in front of JMU. Now, I know they're off a big home win. They're going on the road. It's a short week. You got to lay more than a field goal. But I ain't taking I don't trust Marshall to stop this offense, with what I've seen the last few weeks. And I think the James Madison continues to be just a point spread monster. 4 straight ATS that they have won. I ain't stepping in front of JMU. Doesn't mean I'm betting JMU for sure, but I sure as hell ain't going against them. So it's JMU or pass, and I'll probably jump in with over 52 in this game. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, this game too. I think I had this up. A little bit of revenge from last year. Marshall beat James Madison 26-12. And that's what you mentioned, the Marshall defense. Where has it gone? A team that dating back had won 10 straight games. They lose last week to NC State and then give up a ton last week. The big thing is James Madison should be able to run the football. They average over 160 on the ground. Marshall, ranks 119th. They give up over 190 yards on the ground. That won't be good. But Marshall off back-to-back losses at home. I'm interested in them a little bit as dogs at home, and that's just going against James Madison, who's red hot. I want to look at this one a little bit more throughout the week, but that's where I'm leaning. I think it can get over too. Right now we're a week out or whatever, ways out, a few days out. I don't know if the wind's going to be that bad. We're going to have to just wait till kickoff there. But I lean over. I think there'll be points.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Kurt Cignetti's the head coach of James Madison. They're brothers. Frank is the offensive coordinator with Pitt. Yeah,
at Pitt, right?
Yeah, Frank's the OC at Pitt. Kurt's the head coach at and Kurt's going to get a job in a Power 5 program at some point. It's going to happen.
Oh yeah,
there's no question. So if you like Kurt Cignetti, and why wouldn't you? He's done a great job. Enjoy him while you got him there, because probably not going to be there forever. All right, next up we've got Rice and Tulsa. On Thursday night, as we switch gears here to AAC action. We got Tulsa 3.5 point home favorites, 57.5 being the total here in this one. Bit of an ugly game, I will say that. You've got both of these teams 3-3, 1-1 in conference play so far this season. It'll be interesting to see how this one plays out. Rice and Tulsa both did not play last week, so it is both teams off a bye week here for this game taking place. We'll see how it goes. Rice off a 38-31 loss to UConn as 10-point home favorites, and I took UConn in that game. I mean, are we shitting ourselves? I mean, Rice laying double digits.
At 10, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know UConn's had issues this year, but I actually think their offense is better since they went to that Taquan Roberson kid, at quarterback. And sure enough, he played a pretty good game for UConn in that 38-31 win over Rice. Tulsa off a 20-17 loss against Florida Atlantic. I did like FAU in that game, though. Florida Atlantic was off a bye week. Extra time for Todd Herman to work Daniel Richardson, the Central Michigan quarterback transfer, in it as their starter. And that was just a really nice spot for FAU in that game against Tulsa. And yet Tulsa hung in there and almost came back and won. So, and held FAU to 20 points in that game. I'll say this about Tulsa. Their defense is playing better than I've seen it in recent years. The last 3 games, they played a little bit better on the defensive side of the football. I don't know if I can say that about Rice. I mean, Rice gave up 42 to South Florida in a loss, 38 to UConn, 41 to Houston. Not very good. Okay, they shut down East Carolina. If anyone that's watched East Carolina this season, they have a horrendous offense. Neither quarterback can play. Mason Garcia, Alex Flynn, they both stunk the joint up. So that's the one good defensive performance we've seen from Rice, and it's probably more so because East Carolina is horrendous on offense. So this number, 2.5, I'm a little surprised it's Tulsa laying less than a field goal. I would lean to Tulsa here. I think it's a better defense. The question for Tulsa is going to be the offense has been a little spotty this year, but they've had their number 1 quarterback banged up at times, Braylon Braxton. They've had to go to Cardell Williams, but it looks like Braylon Braxton is good to go here in this game. And he did play against Florida Atlantic, even though he wasn't, I don't think 100% healthy, but now he gets a little bye week here, a little extra time to heal up. I think you're going to see a healthier Braylon Braxton here at quarterback for Tulsa in this game. So as long as this number stays 2.5, 3 in that range, it'll be Tulsa or nothing for me. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, Tulsa got the cover for me, a couple weeks ago, and I rarely want to take them, as a favorite. This is a tough one. It's hard to figure out this Rice team. They don't run it, and that's kind of more the strength of this Tulsa defense is their run defense. Their pass defense is a little shaky. Can Rice throw on them? Maybe a little bit. This is the game I don't really love at all. I think Tulsa's at home. I think they can win it, but I don't even want to lay the 3. This one was a pass. Next.
You're right about that. Tulsa is not great against the pass. They are better against the run, and Rice throws it more than runs it. And Tulsa can, I think, do what they want on offense because Rice isn't great stopping the run or the pass. So Tulsa probably should be able to do it. So this could be an overplay as well. Again, check the weather, 57 and a half. But to me, there's a lot of pathways to offensive success for both teams. Like I say, I think Tulsa can probably run and throw on Rice. And the weakness for Tulsa's defense is the secondary, and Rice's strength is throwing the ball, a little bit because they haven't been able to run it with a whole lot of success. So this could be a game where we get up and over the number here. Again, check the weather. It's October. You never know what you're going to get these days, and it's early in the week. But this might be a game where JT Daniels is able to have some success, too, throwing the ball for Rice against that Tulsa secondary. All right, let's go to Friday night where we only have one game on Friday night, SMU and Temple. SMU 19 and a half, 20-point road favorites, 55 and a half, 56 the total in this game. If you want to take a shot figuring out this Temple offense, go for it. I'm at my wit's end. I really am, because I thought against Tulsa and UTSA, those two games, we saw signs of life from Temple. We saw the offense get going a little bit. Now their defense is pathetic. They've given up 40-plus points now in 4 straight games. Miami, Tulsa, UTSA, North Texas. But I thought that offense with E.J. Warner was starting to come around, starting to get going a little bit with those performances they had against UTSA and then the one against Tulsa as well. They scored 60 points in those 2 games combined. That's a 30-point per game average. But sure enough, they play North Texas on Saturday. And look, I know it was, that's what bothered me too. We only found out right before the game, E.J. Warner, concussion, wasn't playing in that game. Really pissed me off. And they had to go to the backup quarterback. And I don't want to hear anyone bitching about E.J. Warner because they went to the backup quarterback. They had to because Warner was a late absence due to injury, Quincy Patterson. He was terrible throwing the ball. Awful. 12 for 30. 105 passing yards, 3 interceptions against North Texas's defense. It's a brutal defense, North Texas. Terrible they are on defense. And Quincy Patterson made it look like he was playing the 85 Bears defense in that football game against North Texas. I mean, just had no clue, terrible lack of arm strength, bad decision-making, the whole gamut. Absolutely awful. So I don't want to hear anyone bitch about E.J. Warner anymore. E.J. Warner's, say what you will, he hasn't been great. It's a hell of a lot better than what I saw from Quincy Patterson. That's for damn sure on Saturday against one of the worst defenses in college football. And here's Temple scoring 14 points against that defense. Can you tell I'm pissed off? Yeah, I had the over in that game. That's why. And it fell short by just barely because they did absolutely nothing on offense in that game, Temple. So that was very frustrating. I ain't backing Temple against this SMU team with Patterson, that's for sure. Maybe with Warner, maybe I'll have a little more enthusiasm, but I'm not so sure about that either. Total. Now, the scary thing about the total is if I can't bet over if it's not going to be Warner at quarterback, not after what I saw from Patterson. And this SMU defense is pretty good. They held East Carolina to 10, Charlotte to 16. Oklahoma kind of struggled to 28 points against this SMU defense. So this Mustangs defense is pretty good. And Preston Stone has been underwhelming. He hasn't been bad. It's been okay. He's been good, but he hasn't been great considering what I thought Preston Stone would be this season. So maybe an under, especially if Warner doesn't play, but not a game I don't think I'll be betting. What do you think, Connor?
If Warner doesn't play, I don't know what they're going to do because that's basically the strength of SMU's defense so far, has been the pass. And you mentioned for a team like North Texas, who's a defense that's just like Temple's and it seems like 125, 120, every category, you go through everything. I don't know what they're going to do. Yeah, 105 and 3 picks. So I think if he's out, you lay the points. If he's in, you think about it. But Temple's still going to give up 40. I think you look too. We're here Monday. We just talk about team total. Look at SMU team total. I just think they get there, and then once they do, they cruise to this victory. So I look at that number.
All right, good stuff. Yeah, this is again, this is definitely one of those games you want to absolutely be mindful of the quarterback situation here for Temple going into this game before you move on it. All right, let's go to Saturday, Pittsburgh and Wake Forest to get the Saturday portion of the show underway. Wake Forest 1.5, 2-point home favorites. The total here at 48 across the board. I like Wake here. Not Wake. I mean, let me get this right. Wasn't thinking there. I like Pitt here a little bit in this game, but I'm going to wait to see if the money continues to trickle in a little bit here on Wake Forest. Wake Forest is a bet against team for me. I cashed a ticket with Virginia Tech last week against Wake Forest. They were a small home favorite. I said, this Wake team's just not good this year. Mitch Griffiths is a huge decline at the quarterback spot. We're finding that out right now. No, he ain't no Sam Hartman. That's for sure. Sam Hartman ain't walking through that door anytime soon for Wake Forest. And yeah, it's been tough watching Mitch Griffiths struggle at the quarterback position. And I'll say what you will about Pitt. Maybe they took advantage of Louisville looked a little flat, admittedly, against Pitt on Saturday. And Pitt took advantage with the outright upset, getting more than a touchdown as underdogs. They take care of Louisville in that game. But at the same time, their offense looked a lot better. 38 points. I mean, that was unheard of for Pitt. And the quarterback change that Pat Narduzzi made going to Christian Veilleux, it paid off. He was good. He wasn't lighting up the scoreboard or the stat sheet. Only 12 completions, but 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, didn't make any mistakes. It was a very good performance from him at the quarterback spot. Didn't make mistakes. Wake Forest, like I said, 3 straight losses. Georgia Tech, Clemson, Virginia Tech, again, blown out 30-13 in that game. Mitch Griffiths has struggled, no question about that. The defense has been, well, against the better teams, the defense still has some shakiness to it. They gave up 30 to Georgia Tech, 30 to Virginia Tech, 24 against Old Dominion, and barely won that game. And they do also have a game on their schedule where at Clemson, 21-point dog, they almost won that game 17-12. They did play good defense there, but I look at this and, the Pitt, I saw a spark out of Pitt after the quarterback change, and I don't like Wake, and I certainly don't want to lay points with Wake. So by default, this is Pittsburgh or nothing if I'm betting this game. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, it was just, after that win, can they keep going? Like you talked about, you just came in, 200 yards, 2 TDs, was very good. I thought the defense played well. And what are we going to get from Wake with Griffiths? I just don't know. Pitt's been able to go in there, too, the last few times to Wake and win. These games had a lot of points. This total has already come down a little bit because, Wake's defense has been pretty good. They just can't score. I kind of lean Pitt, early on in the week. I want to dig through it a little more, but Wake Forest hasn't been the team I've been able to back at all, even at home.
I'm just looking now to see. I've got the weather information now. There's a chance of rain, moderate wind here. There is a bunch of potential weather games this weekend again. Now we had the nor'easter last weekend, which wasn't as bad, I think, as they thought. But there are a few handful of games that might be.
That Temple game too. We had a little light rain. That last game we had.
Yeah,
little rain there. Ronnie just put in there. Yeah.
Exactly. So again, keep an eye on the weather situations. And again, now that we're into October, November, yeah, definitely more weather events could appear.
Check the weather.
Games. Yeah.
Got to have like a little bit of meteorologist in you.
Yeah.
Yes, especially with the totals. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. And remember, wind is the more detrimental factor for overs than rain or snow. It's always wind that will hurt you as far as overs go, way more than rain or snow. All right, we got Penn State and Ohio State, one of the Big 12 showdowns that we've been looking forward to this season for a long time. Ohio State, 4.5-point home favorites, and the total here, 47 across the board. James Franklin's had a hard time winning some of these games, and that's been the issue for Penn State. Are they ready to take that step? I mean, they're undefeated this year, 6-0, albeit, look at this schedule. West Virginia was okay, but not great. Delaware Illinois is way down. Iowa has no offense. Northwestern stinks. UMass stinks. I mean, my goodness, that's a weak schedule. I'm sorry. It's a very weak schedule for Penn State. So you talk about by far, and it's not even close, by far, the cataclysmic difference in the difficulty of the opponent here compared to anything they faced this year. It's not only Ohio State, but it's Ohio State in the shoe. That is going to be, is Penn State ready, for this kind of test? At least with Ohio State, Western Kentucky's a solid group of 5 team. Maryland, I think, is an improved team. And they played Notre Dame at Notre Dame. At least for Ohio State, they have some tough games that they've played up till this point. So let's see if they're ready for it. I'll say this Ohio State defense, I haven't seen them play as well in a long time as they played this year. They haven't given up 20 points in a game this year. They held Notre Dame to 14. They held Western Kentucky, a very good passing attack, to 10 points. This is no joke, this Ohio State defense. This is as good as I've seen Ryan Day's group, and Jim Knowles deserves all the credit. The moment they hired that guy away from Mike Gundy, who was there for years as the Oklahoma State defensive coordinator, it was a great hire. Last year, I know, first year he was the DC. There were some ups and downs with that defense, but now it's his second year, and look at the way they're playing on the defensive side of the football. Very, very impressive. Now the question is, can Drew Aller, and this run game and the stable of backs be able to move the football here against this Ohio State defense, which has been terrific? They're only giving up 3.1 yards per carry, 109 rushing yards per game. Outstanding. They're stopping the run. They're stopping the pass. This is definitely a team that wants to run the football, Penn State. I don't know if they'll be able to do it. That being said, we know Ohio State's offense this year. This is a big opponent. This is a tough opponent. Kyle McCord has weapons, as we know. Marvin Harrison Jr. Leading a great receiving corps. But, their offense has been rather spotty at times this year, especially when Ohio State's played better teams and better defenses. I know they put up 37 against Maryland, but it took them a while to get going in that game. 41 against Purdue, but Purdue doesn't have much of a defense. Let's not forget that against Notre Dame, by far, I think the best defense. And look at what Notre Dame just did to Caleb Williams and USC, and Ohio State struggled to move the football against Notre Dame in that game. And Penn State's got a really good defense themselves. So I could only look at the Buckeyes here at -4 because that schedule is just so pathetic for Penn State, so weak that it has me questioning whether they're ready to go on the road and hang with this Ohio State team. Not to mention Ohio State, they've won 5 straight. And the last 4 years, they had an 11-point win, a 13-point win, a 9-point win, and a 13-point win. Okay, all of them double-digit victories the last 4 years for Ohio State. So to me, it's Ohio State or nothing. I don't trust James Franklin in these games, in these big spots. I don't trust them offensively against this kind of defense, which is the best Buckeye defense I've seen in years. Ohio State or nothing. Haven't bet it. Don't know if I'll bet it. But at this number, I could only look at the home favorite, Ohio State. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, you were hitting it good. The Penn State just hasn't played anyone. And their defense, you talked about Ohio State's been very good. It's looked great, but they just haven't played anyone. The numbers are great for Penn State. You talked about those past games, especially at Ohio State. They just haven't been able to win. One thing was they've been able to cover those numbers in past years because they were getting huge spread, You're getting 15 points with Penn State, 18, all these fucking numbers. Now it's just 4.5. I kind of believe in Penn State a little bit, but they haven't shown anything. It's just, these teams that start out 5-0, 6-0 until their schedule gets tougher. I've kind of touched on that the last few weeks. I want to take the points with Penn State, but James Franklin in big games has let me down. So this is one I got to stew over through the week. Savannah, but I'm looking at Penn State a little bit, but maybe Ohio State. I mean, Purdue's not good, but after getting by Notre Dame, it looks like they're really ramping, and that defense has looked very, very good, last week.
Yeah, I mean, it is a ridiculous schedule for Penn State so far, Ronnie, and that's why I'm worried about them. Look, the eye test tells me they're a damn good football team. I love the balance. I like Aller throwing in the run game, Singleton, and all those great backs. I love their defense. Their defense is excellent. But how many great offenses have they played? That's the concern.
And it seems like it's just been their problem is Ohio State and Michigan. Like they lose those, they're going to go on and beat Indiana and Rutgers and end up 9-2. So this is their hurdle for them.
Do you want to know why I can't trust and back Penn State in this game? Last year against Ohio State and Michigan, you know what the combined score was? 85-48 for the opponents. 85-48 outscored in those two games against Ohio State and Michigan last year for Penn State. So he can't beat Day. He can't beat Harbaugh, James Franklin. Until I see evidence that he can, no mas. Sorry, Ohio State or nothing for me.
He'll beat up though. Take him against the small schools though. He loves beating them up on them.
Yeah, he likes kicking a field goal up by 40 with 3 minutes left to cover the point spread, or punch in a touchdown with 10 seconds to go, like he did against West Virginia. But winning a big time football game in the Big Ten against the two powers, no, not interested. Can't do it. So we'll see how he fares here in this one against Ohio State. Like I say, at 4. I'm not taking Penn State at +4, even though I like them. I think this is as good a team as they've had, but at the same time, I like what I see, but I can't put too much stock in it because they played nobody, absolutely nobody, and especially on the road of this caliber, nobody.
They shut out, the high-powered Iowa
offense. Yeah, of course. Now, let's give them a ton of credit for that with Deacon Hill and. When Deacon Hill and Cade McNamara combined are not much better options than probably Conor Mack and I would be at quarterback. You got issues right now with Iowa.
It's crazy. We'll get to Iowa. They're going to win the West too, probably, after that win against Wisconsin.
Well, they very well might. All right, Clemson, Miami. We've got Clemson's taking money. Wow. Just as we speak, this opened 2.5. Clemson is road favorites. 3.5 road favorites, up to 4 in some spots. 49, 50 the total. Actually, the total I think is going down. It was 50. It's down to 49, 48.5. Look, people are just crashing on Miami. Just the brain fart of all time from Cristobal at the end of the Georgia Tech game, which they somehow lost as a massive 3-touchdown favorite. And then just, they were in it for a while against North Carolina, but the bad defense couldn't stop them in the second half. Tar Heels get the victory. And now that's 2 crushing losses in a row. This team's thinking win the ACC and maybe be a playoff contender. Couple of weeks ago, especially when they trounced A&M and they had all these great performances. Now all of a sudden, so many of their aspirations are out the door. Can't be in the playoff. Can't win the ACC likely anymore. They have 2 ACC losses now on their resume. So I get people back in Clemson thinking maybe this is going to go off the rails here for Miami based on what's happened the last 2 weeks. That being said, I'm now seeing 3.5 to. Not really in love with laying on the road with Clemson. I mean, it's still an offense, and Klubnik's still trying to grow in it. Again, he thought the offense was coming to life. In the loss against Florida State, I thought he still played well. Syracuse, he played very well, but then he took a step back, and the offense took a step back against Wake. They struggled, and they were fortunate, life and death, against Wake Forest to win that game 17-12, and that was at home as well. So offense still has some issues. So I don't know if I'm ready to lay more than a field goal with Clemson, but I don't want Miami. Not after these last 2 losses. I worry about that mentality and where they're at because a lot of they're starting to think some grandiose dreams prior to the last 2 games, and all those dreams are dashed now with these back-to-back losses against Georgia Tech and North Carolina. So probably a game I won't bet as of right now. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, and Clemson's coming off their bye, right? Against Wake Forest.
That's true, and a big situational advantage. You're right for Clemson off a bye week. Yep.
I think that's big for them. And what the big key too is they've just whipped Miami too. These last few times they played, like just blowouts. They've just really kicked their ass. And I do think they're better. One thing though is with Miami, they had a ton of yards. 4 turnovers was just awful. The picks by Van Dyke, they had a couple fumbles. You can't have 4 turnovers and think you're going to win the game. North Carolina just got there the second half. I think they could hang around. I want to watch this one through the week more. It's just, how do you take a Miami team that's got to just feel like shit right now? But you got to get up. Big game versus Clemson. Both these teams, are not happy after losses this year. But, if I don't know, if I get 4, I might look Miami's way.
And look, I've criticized Sweeney, Dabo the last couple of years and about some of his coordinator hires, which haven't been great. Some of his coaching decisions and game management have been bad. But man, this guy looks like Bill Walsh and friggin' Chuck Noll and Vince Lombardi compared to Mario Cristobal from that standpoint. So
Yeah,
this is the one game he probably does have an edge, and the bye week too.
yeah. It's run for the hills.
Yeah.
Betters are, from
Yeah.
Miami.
In theory, this is Clemson coming into their place. They should be amped up, but we'll see. And even if they are amped up, I don't trust them to win a game like this. And the one thing about Clemson is their defense is still playing pretty good, reasonably good this season. Okay, Florida State, they struggled a bit, but that's a hell of an offense. Other than that, I think Clemson's defense has been pretty good so far this year. All right, Virginia, North Carolina. We stay in the ACC. North Carolina, 23.5-point home favorites, 56 being the total here in this game. Now, you do have to worry a little bit about, North Carolina in the spot here following the big win against Miami. Saturday night ABC televised game. 6-0 on the season, 4-0 straight up, 3-1 against the spread. It's not the spot that I want to lay this number with North Carolina in, but is there enough faith and confidence and trust, that I have right now in Virginia? I'm not so sure. That being said, they've now covered 3 in a row, Virginia. They are off a bye week as well, which is good news. Let's see if that benefits them here in this game against North Carolina. Now, I believe the Musket man, Tony Musket, came back the last game for Virginia at quarterback. Remember, Anthony Calandria had to play for a bit there until, the last couple of games. But yeah, we saw Musket back against William and Mary in their last game, and 65% completions. He had 17 of 26, 232 through the air. He's actually 5 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He's played better. Remember, he got injured in that Tennessee game. He didn't play well. He missed the next 3, came back again the BC and William and Mary games for Virginia, and he's actually played better, in those 2 games. But this is going to be a taller order. You're playing North Carolina. You're playing them on the road. Musket's shown me enough. I could see over the total, 56. Virginia still doesn't have a great defense. And every time they've played a good offense this year, Virginia, we've seen them give up points. I mean, Maryland put 42, James Madison 36, 49 for Tennessee. You could see North Carolina scoring their share of points with their great offense against Virginia. But with Musket showing some improvement since he returned from that injury, maybe defense is where North Carolina, the letdown, shows up. Maybe on defense, they're not quite locked in following the big win. So if I were to bet anything, it might be total and go over that 56 here in this one. What do you think, C-Mac?
Yeah, can it get over? It had that shootout against James Madison, like you talked about. I think this is a little bit flat spot for North Carolina. It seems like a win. Maybe Virginia first half. I'm gonna be on them. I think this is too many points. I think they can hang around in this football game. And North Carolina, just the big win. This seems just the get in, get out, being at home here. And I think Virginia gets in. They've covered numbers lately. The last few games, I think they're 4-1 the last 5 ATS. So give me all these points with Virginia.
Yeah, it would be Virginia or nothing for me, and off a bye week as well. Now, I'm not saying Tony Elliott. There's another coach that I worry about him using the bye week to great effect. He's not one of my favorite X's and O's coaches, and that goes without saying, Tony Elliott. But they are still off a bye week. North Carolina, is off the big win. So, yeah, I think Virginia, and maybe split it up first half, full game if you like Virginia, just in case, North Carolina wakes up in the second half and beats the hell out of them, which could happen. In this game,
Virginia can't stop the run. That's their problem. Like that, they gotta try. Like in their bye week to get better. I mean, they give up about 180 yards on the ground, and Carolina can run it.
And keep in mind too, North Carolina, they are undefeated, but I believe only one of those victories has been by more than 24 points or 24 points or more, and that was Syracuse.
Was that the Syracuse? Yeah,
okay. 40-7, and Syracuse was they gift wrapped so many points for North Carolina in that game too. So there's a lot of points to be laying in this spot when they've only won one game this year, North Carolina, by more than this point spread. So definitely make sure you keep that in mind. All right, next up we've got Boston. No, it's not Boston College, Georgia Tech. It's Baylor and Cincinnati. We've got Cincinnati 2.5, 3-point home favorites, 52 the total. Little Big 12 action here in this game. Man, this is a tough one for me. I don't really love either of these teams right now. I'll be quite honest. Baylor obviously has had a pretty wretched season. They get Blake Shapen back against UCF and have that crazy comeback. And then that same offense, I bought into them playing well against Texas Tech, and they did nothing in that game. 39-14. They get absolutely whipped by Texas Tech. Cincinnati, that's a horrendous game. That is a brutal result for them. Off a bye week to boot, playing Iowa State, who's not exactly one of the, the stalwarts of the Big 12, and they get romped 30-10. They weren't even in the football game. So I ain't taking Cincy. And I'm worried now. Satterfield, is this thing's starting to fall apart a little for Cincy. That's 4 straight losses, including a loss to Miami O, a good MAC team, but you shouldn't be losing to Miami O when you're 2 touchdown home favorites. Oklahoma, you lost 26, no shame in that, but the BYU lost. They made tons of mistakes. Quarterback is making too many mistakes too, Emory Jones, and that's definitely something you don't want to see here if you're a Cincinnati. I mean, these are 2 teams that are just grave disappointments. 2 teams I don't think are very good right now, 2 teams I don't trust right now. There's really no reason for me to bet this game. I don't think I will be. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, I don't want to bet this game really at all either. Cincinnati, as long as Emory Jones, running the football is fine, he still just can't throw it, and he continuously makes mistakes. I think, did he have 1 or 2 picks last week? I think he had 2 against Iowa State. I like that under that game and Iowa State. I just don't think Cincinnati should be laying points right now. One thing is, though, Baylor's run defense is bad. Cincinnati just run it, and run it some more. And Baylor looking to turn around their year. You mentioned after the bye, just a little bit tricky spot.
Yeah, it definitely is a tricky spot. And Cincinnati, that's a very disappointing result for Cincinnati off a bye week. Now Baylor's off a bye week, so it's actually an advantage for Baylor here. They get the extra time to prepare here for this game against Cincinnati. Yeah, that's true, Robert. I agree with that a little bit. I don't love their offense still, Iowa State, but it's getting better. And look, their defense has played better the last few games. There's no
defense
question.
Gotten better. Beck looked a little better.
Beck's looked a little bit better. Yeah, there's reasons for optimism with Iowa State. They are improving, but that's still not a good loss for Cincinnati last week. All right, Michigan State. We got Michigan 24.5-point road favorites, 48 the total here in this one. This year we've seen it play out, Connor, that Michigan in this big road favorite role, in times in the past, they haven't always been reliable, as big road favorites and just obliterating opponents. But right now they are. You look at it, especially on the road, Nebraska 45-7 and Minnesota 52-10. The 2 games as road favorites here in Big Ten play for Michigan. There's Michigan or nothing. I'm not stepping in front of Michigan right now. It's just not going to happen. Now, they don't have a look ahead because they have a bye week after this, and then they play Purdue on November the 4th. So there's no look ahead. There's their bye week coming up. This is a little brother. This is a team that, even though they know they're better than Michigan State, if they can punch in a score or 2, they won't hesitate. You think Jim Harbaugh won't hesitate? Like, he wants to send a message here that we run the Big Ten in the state of Michigan. And they are good enough, Michigan, probably to maybe roll over this Michigan State team, which did cover the number against Rutgers. But, they lost 27-24. The defense falls apart. The offense is still very, very much a work in progress. Although I did see some improvement. They finally made a change here and went to Hauser at quarterback last week for Michigan State. And he actually played better than anything I saw to Noah Kim. That is for sure.
Oh, yeah, me too.
No question about that. And 18-29, 2 touchdowns, 62% completions. But let's see you do it, kid, against one of the best defenses in college football here with what Michigan has. I worry that it's going to be like the Minnesota game. This is still a young kid, Hauser. Yeah, early interception, return for a touchdown. That's what they did to Kaliak Manis in that Minnesota game, Michigan. And then once you're trailing early to Michigan, it's like you're swimming upstream for the whole game. So, yeah, look, Michigan has shown you clear as day the last several games they're willing to run up scores and beat the hell out of their opponent. And this is an in-state opponent where I think they've got even the motivation, too, to run it up on them. So Michigan or nothing for me, C-Mac. What do you think?
Well, I think they've been it seems, too, once Harbaugh's been back after the 3 games, he doesn't mind running it up. When he was out, they kind of were easing. There were some covers there. It was like 30-7. this a rivalry that always was good. And Michigan State, not only cover would beat them regularly, in the past 20 years. Last year, I think this game's similar to last year. It was 29-7. I did like the change with Hauser, and it was long overdue. Because I even thought going to that game, Noah Kim would be, versus Rutgers. And Rutgers was horrible. Good interceptions, Wimsatt. It was bad. Now they ended up getting going and won the game. But man, it was ugly. Yeah, and the Michigan State defense really fell apart in the second half of that Rutgers game. They won't be able to stop it. And you talked about if they score, but even if Michigan State gets an early touchdown, we saw Maryland get one, right, this last week. Didn't mean shit. A trick play, that was about the only thing they got on Michigan over their head was that touchdown. So I can't do it. Normally, I'd want to be on this, Michigan State team at home, all these points. But I can't do it. It's Michigan right now or stay away.
They must not have any quarterbacks at Wake Forest. I'm just seeing some breaking news on X here on social media that Mitch Griffiths has already been named the starting quarterback again for Wake Forest. So they obviously think that they don't have much behind him because they're sticking with him. And as I've said earlier, he hasn't been very good. But yeah, to me, Michigan's been too good. That defense, Michigan State team total under might be the best option in this game because again, has Michigan given up more than 10 points in a game this season? I don't believe they have. I mean, they've just been insane on the defensive side. Yeah, 7, 10, 7, 7, 6, 7, 3. I mean, what a defense they have had here in Michigan. Now, they haven't faced a ton of great offenses. Let's be real. We do have to admit that.
Yeah.
But that defense is really good. But still, let's see what happens when Penn State, Maryland, and obviously Ohio State come a-knocking later this season. All right, next up, we've got Oklahoma State, West Virginia. West Virginia, 3.5 point home favorites, 50.5 the total. Money coming in on West Virginia right now here in this game. I was beside myself. You talk about, there was a couple of games where just unfortunate beats, and one of them for me was being on West Virginia against Houston. I mean, you got to be shitting me that you give up the Hail Mary there. And that moron numbnuts quarterback, Garrett Green, ripping his helmet off when they got the go-ahead touchdown with, there's 10 seconds left in the game, dummy. I mean, maybe keep your helmet on and not celebrate like you've won the game already.
That's why they got the flag, right? That's how they got the ball out there. Okay, yeah.
And they got the great field position out of it. I mean, it was just absolutely moronic stuff. And have you not watched any NFL and college football, kid, over the years that as long as there's time on the clock, anything can happen? But apparently not. And it gave them the field position that put them in position to be close enough to launch the Hail Mary, which sure enough, Houston got for the win. Brutal loss for West Virginia. They outplayed Houston. They deserved to win that game. And they also gave up a kick return touchdown. So they definitely deserved to win that game, but they didn't. Maybe they see, hey, statistically, they outplayed Houston and they didn't win. Now they're undervalued. And maybe that's why they're betting West Virginia here in this game. But I'm going to give Oklahoma State credit here because and Mike Gundy, man, just when you're ready to throw the fucking dirt on his grave, with a particular team in a particular season, he rises from the ashes and he does everything in his power because he's a good coach to make the team better as the season goes on. He's doing that again. I thought this team was one of his worst teams ever. And sure enough, they've beaten the two Kansas schools back-to-back weeks outright as underdogs, Kansas State and Kansas, each of the last 2 weeks. Yeoman's work by Mike Gundy. And finally, at least what I like, and we talked about it last week too, he settled on one quarterback, Alan Bowman, for him, and he's been good. He's throwing the ball well, very accurate, good completion rate, 336 through the air, no interceptions last week. They can bet West Virginia all they want. I'm going to look at Okie State here. They're a red-hot commodity. They're good in the underdog role. I don't trust this West Virginia team laying points, and sure enough, they showed me that last week against a much worse Houston team, why I don't trust them laying points. So, yeah, they can like West Virginia, not this better. What do you think here, Connor?
Yeah, Oklahoma State. Wow. 2 great games. I thought there was another good spot. Bowman's looked really good, just throwing it around, 300 yards. And, yeah, the devastating loss to West Virginia was horrible. What I couldn't believe is just, I guess it's a college game. It gets into shootout. Where'd the defense go for West Virginia in the second half? They got to get back to basics because when I look at this game, I want to take the under. But I don't know. Oklahoma State's played a lot better, scored a bit more points. That game got over with Kansas easily. So I'm not going to mess with the total here, and I'm going to stay off the side as well. Usually I want West Virginia at home. I kind of lean that way, but it's just a lean.
Yeah, I mean, Oklahoma State's figuring it out right now. Their defense has even played better here in these last couple of wins that they've had as well. Against Kansas, they gave up some points, but you're going to against Kansas. Kansas is just a very good, not only good offensive team, but their scheme and their play calling has been good all year. Kansas, so you got to.
The defense was big late in that game, though, Babano, in the fourth quarter for Oklahoma State to win it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what it's about in so many of these games. It's getting the key stops. It's just getting them those defensive stands when you need them. And Oklahoma State obviously was able to get them last week. All right, Duke and Florida State. How about this? Interesting matchup here. Duke taking on Florida State. Florida State 14-point favorites, 49 the total in this game. To be honest with you, Duke's got the potential to really give Florida State a game if, of course, Riley Leonard was at quarterback for them in this game, and we're still not sure. Right now he's week to week with this ankle injury. Now he was taking part in warmups Saturday before the NC State game, and Henry Beelan, the freshman quarterback, ended up playing in that game for Duke against NC State. Obviously, Leonard would give them, I think, a puncher's chance to not only compete with Florida State, but maybe even give them a chance at the upset. But I'll say this about Henry Beelan. His performance last week, not great. 4 for 12, 107 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. But they got the run game going. They didn't ask too much of him. And it was enough to get past NC State. And that Duke defense, man, was just phenomenal. Absolutely terrific. They made life miserable on Morris. They shut down. They had no run game to speak of at all, NC State. And that Duke defense is the real thing. Like, they have played such great football this year. They shut down Notre Dame, and they were only lucky that Notre Dame won that game because Leonard got hurt in that game. They played great defense against every other team. That being said, they have not, other than Notre Dame, seen an offense like this. So let's see how Duke fares against, Jordan Travis and company in this very explosive Florida State offense. If this was Leonard and they were getting double digits, I'd be leaning Duke here. But, man, Beelan can't be 4 for 12 against this Florida State team and expect them to be competitive. That's just not going to be possible. As much as that Duke defense is going to do their part, they have a good defense. They're going to hang in there. I also don't know if that Duke defense is going to be able to hang in for 4 quarters against this kind of offense, because this is, as far as team speed is concerned, athleticism, quality at the receiver spot, this is as good as Duke has faced offensively all season long. This is as tough a defensive assignment as it's been all year for Duke. So, and without Leonard, if he doesn't play, I couldn't pull the trigger on Duke with those two factors in mind. Their defense facing the best offense they played, and Leonard maybe not playing. That's going to probably likely keep me off Duke. I don't know if I'll lay 14 with Florida State. I don't think I will. But any interest in Duke for me is contingent upon Leonard playing. What do you think here, Seaman?
Yeah, same for me. If he's in, it's a go, because I think he can scramble enough, make enough plays for them to score. And I've seen enough. This Duke defense, I think, is for real. Against Notre Dame, against Clemson. We saw Florida State, Clemson. Common opponent. I love what their defense does. Now, their pass defense is a lot better. Only give up 160, and they give up about 130 on the ground. At Florida State averages almost 180. So that won't be easy, but this defense has just been great. And if Riley Leonard is a go, I'm on the points here with Duke. As a dog, check it off.
All right, Rutgers and Indiana. We move to the Big Ten. Rutgers 5-point road favorites, 42.5 the total in this one. I got my fill of trying to lay points with Rutgers against Michigan State. And to be honest with you, once I only heard about the quarterback change, when the game kicked off, and I thought Kim was going to play for Michigan State, but Hauser did give them a spark, and I think I would be less reluctant to take Rutgers last week had I known that, but unfortunately I didn't. And 27-24, it ended up being a win, but not a cover for Rutgers. That being said, how the hell do you take Indiana right now? Indiana is an absolute disaster. Now, they have played tough 2 games on the road back-to-back, Maryland and Michigan, but outscored 96-24 in those 2 games. They failed to cover in 3 straight. They are getting points now. They are a home underdog. We haven't seen that much from them this year in this kind of role. And they did cover as home dogs against Ohio State. It probably feels like you are getting some value on Indiana, but they've just been so awful. And I'm not sure I'm ready to trust. Yeah, Rutgers laying 5 on the road with Wimsatt in the offense, which is sketchy. Let's put it that way with the Rutgers offense. I mean, and they've got to be able to run the football if they're going to have their most success on the offensive side. That passing game is still spotty. And the good news, though, is Indiana might allow them to run the football. They're giving up 160 rushing yards per game and 4.7 yards per carry. So, God, it's a tough game. I'm probably not going to get involved. I probably shouldn't get involved, and I think that's the move. I would lean under as well, 42.5, 42. They changed the offensive coordinator, and I haven't seen a whole lot of change and improvement from Indiana's offense since they made the switch at OC. Hasn't really resulted in a big spark for their offense. They're still plagued by inconsistent, erratic quarterback play at the moment as well. They are off a bye week, I believe. Let me just double check on that. Indiana, no, they played last week at Michigan, and of course Rutgers played Michigan State. So no bye weeks here. Probably going to end up being a pass for me in this one. We'll get Conor's take on this game when he gets back, but in the meantime, we'll roll along to UTSA and Florida Atlantic. We've got UTSA here, the Roadrunners, 3.5-point road favorites, 58.5 being the total here in this game. C-Mac is back. C-Mac, did you have any thoughts on the last game, Rutgers, Indiana?
Oh, I can't back Rutgers late in the points. I just, not on the road. One thing, they're still good against the number, even with the loss, but they should have won that game without the mistakes early and easily. They should have won by 2 touchdowns, 10 or 14 for sure against Michigan State. But I was with you a little bit. I thought Noah Kim was playing. I haven't heard, the Hauser move, and then he looks great, especially the first half was a surprise. Indiana back here at home. I'm looking at them. I know they just got their ass blown up by Michigan, but I think this could be close. So I'd rather be on the points with Indiana.
Yeah, and 0 touchdowns, 3 interceptions for their quarterback, Taven Jackson, the last couple of weeks. But at the same time, he played Maryland and Michigan. And compared to those 2 teams, this is a step down for Indiana. I do agree there.
It is, and their offense is horrible. I mean, that's just it's rough.
It is what it is, yeah. All right, UTSA, Florida Atlantic. UTSA, look, a pretty solid performance from them last week against UAB. Unfortunately, their defense played a lot better than I thought it would. And I say unfortunate because I really like that UTSA UAB over. There's another one that was so frustrating. There's several games that were just so frustrating. I actually had a winning week in college football. It was a profitable week, but it could have been a huge week if West Virginia doesn't give up a Hail Mary to Houston, if this game doesn't fall short, as far as the over is concerned. And that one was on pace, but, UTSA tightened up on defense and UAB really struggled on offense in the second half. But that's a good sign for UTSA. And Frank Harris has played good now. He looks healthier the last couple of weeks. That UTSA offense has been better. Now we'll see how they fare here against FAU. I think FAU is a better football team now with Richardson at quarterback. You give Tom Herman credit. He's made the adjustment to Richardson with Casey Thompson's injury. And we're seeing Florida Atlantic now offensively getting better week by week. They hung a 56 spot at South Florida last week. They're 2-0 straight up in ATS with Richardson under center. Remember, this is a guy that played a lot of football at Central Michigan. So he's a very experienced quarterback. I'm tempted by FAU here. The Owls here in this game, 3.5. I might get back to the well with an over here because I think the FAU offense now is starting to crank up with Daniel Richardson. And on the flip side, FAU's defense has been, pretty good the last couple of weeks, but Tulsa, South Florida, they're not the offenses the UTSA has. And let's not forget they got 48 given up to Clemson earlier this season. So, the defense is going to be put to the test here. I think it can get up and over the total between these 2 teams. but I'm leaning FAU a little bit here in Boca Raton, home to underdog spot. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, I certainly looked at this last night, but I thought UAB just crumbled in the second half. That was, I guess, the best at home UTSA's looked. And at 30, what was it, 31-20, I thought there'd be a couple scores to get over, and UAB would be right in that game, but that didn't happen at all. I still don't want to lay points with UTSA. I know Frank Harris has looked good. He's back. But I don't know about that one game. I don't know if their defense is really that good. And FAU at home, catching this 3.5, I'm looking that way.
Hey, it's Tom Herman as an underdog. 2-1 ATS this year as an underdog. Tom Herman with FAU, and the only time they didn't cover as a dog was Clemson, and they got outmanned. But against comparable competition, Illinois covered as a dog, and of course they won outright as a dog last week against South Florida. So that coach is not one I'm looking to go against when he's an underdog. And this goes back to when he was at Houston and when he was at Texas. He was just absolutely spectacular in the underdog role. And 2 out of 3 in that role for FAU this year. All right, next up, we've got Toledo and Miami, Ohio. Toledo here is a slight road favorite, 2 in this game, 48.5, 49 the total in this game. Man, there's a love affair with Toledo in the betting markets every week. A lot of people like betting this team week in and week out. Now, here's the difference. Toledo has been the ultimate bet against team for me for the last few weeks, and it's because they've been big favorites in all these games. They are horrible as bigger favorites, and it's been this way throughout the Jason Candle era. 0-4 against the spread their last 4 games. 21.5-point favorites against Western Michigan. They win by 18. Don't cover. 13.5-point favorites against Northern Illinois. They win by 2. Easily don't cover. 19.5 points against lowly UMass, and they only win by 17. 17.5-point favorites last week at Ball State, and they only win 13-6. I mean, they have just been horrible as bigger favorites. But the difference is they just have to win the game, and they've been winning these games. They just haven't been covering so far this year. 6-1 straight up. The only loss was against Illinois in their first game of the season. That being said, it's much tougher to bet against Toledo in this price range because they still are one of the best teams in the MAC. But I really think Miami O is really good. And I said all along that Miami O this season is a dark horse team to win the MAC conference. I like what I see from the offense with Brett Gabbert. They can run the football pretty effectively, and they have, without a doubt, one of the best defenses in the MAC. There aren't a ton of great defenses in the MAC, but Miami has one of them. Make no mistake about it. And, this Toledo defense has given up 156 rushing yards per game, 4.2 yards per carry against a Miami O run game that's averaging 162 rushing yards per game, which is pretty impressive. You got Miami O at home here, a big-time MAC game. That's why I put it on our games list, Connor. This is a big game. This is a huge game in the MAC conference. 2 of the better teams. I'm leaning Miami O here, +2 at home. I think they've got a potential to pick off this Toledo team here, especially that the one area that Toledo's had some weakness defensively has been stopping the run, where Miami's very good. And on the flip side, the offense still for Toledo is a little scattershot. And let's not forget, they've played some pretty bad teams here in recent weeks and bad defenses. And yet Daquan Finn and the offense is kind of erratic throwing the football. So I think they're going to be put to the test by this Miami O defense. I think Miami O can win this game, and I would certainly look their way as a slight home underdog. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, I was hoping for a few more points, though, with Miami. It seems like Toledo took care of business. One bigger last week that we would have got easily over a field goal here. But I like Miami, Ohio's defense. We talked about it. These, even though these teams haven't played in a while, these quarterbacks have been here for a long time. I like Miami, Ohio's defense, like you mentioned. Defense very good. There's good special teams. And what do you get at Toledo? It seems like they beat up on the bad teams. And this is the MAC. Like, when I look at this, I want the under, but this could just get out of hand, and points can be scored at a drop. So I don't know if I mess with the total in this one, but and I wish I had a few more points, but I'd lean Miami, Ohio.
Yeah, this is definitely the game of the week in the MAC, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how it plays out here with Toledo and Miami, Ohio. All right, Wisconsin and Illinois. We go back to the Big Ten. Wisconsin, 2.5-point road favorites, 42 the total. This has been bet down. This game opened Wisconsin 4.5-point road favorites down to 2.5, and it's because Tanner Mordecai's broken his hand and he's out indefinitely at quarterback for Wisconsin. That is the reaction, and that's why the money's poured in here on Illinois in this game. So that means Luke Fickell going to have to turn to Miles Burkett Braden Locke is going to be the quarterback here for Wisconsin moving forward. He's going to get his first start of the season here as in his career. Braden Locke. He took over for Mordecai on Saturday in the 15-6 loss to Iowa. Now, granted, he was playing against a terrific defense, Iowa. 15 of 30, 50% completions, 122 through the air, no touchdowns, 1 interception. He struggled, obviously. Comes into the game, Mordecai gets injured. Now he's facing a team where Illinois' defense has been brutal this year compared to last year. They lost everybody on the defensive side of the football, and they just have not been able to adequately replace that NFL-bound talent on the defensive side of the football this season. Illinois coming off a 27-24 win against Maryland, which was a stunner. And Luke Altmaier comes out of nowhere in that win against Maryland and plays one of his better games. They had some success running the football. The defense, it was just one of those games where Illinois just made some key plays. They finally got their offense going, and they pull a stunner as an almost 2-touchdown underdog on the road against Maryland last week. But I don't know. Is that a sign Illinois is ready to go on a bit of a run here? I'm not so sure. I don't trust Illinois still. I got to see it again. And if anything, now you're going to get a deflated point spread with Wisconsin, even though they're going to Braden Locke at quarter. It's not like Mordecai was phenomenal for them this year. It's not like he was absolutely lighting it up for this offense. So I actually think there's value now in Wisconsin if you can trust the new quarterback. But I don't trust Illinois. I need to see more. I know that was a nice win on the road against Maryland. Very unexpected, but let's not forget how bad Illinois looked before that. I still can't get that out of my mind. I need to see 2 games in a row of consistency before I'm ready to say, yeah, Illinois is back on track. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, and on the road here, I don't know how much you want to put on, this kid Locke. I think you hand it off because that's been, obviously it's always Wisconsin, their strength running the football, and Illinois has just not been good, rank 102, 164. I think they've looked a little better the last few weeks, but it was pretty bad early on. We've touched on it, how much they lost to the NFL, but still I thought they'd be better than this. Altmaier, he's the key. If he, doesn't throw any interceptions, fumbles, I think Illinois is in this game and wins it. And I think you could even lead a little under, but I don't trust the defense because I know Wisconsin's just going to be slow as all hell. The total's just really low. So I mean Illinois here at home.
All right, we stay in the Big Ten, Minnesota and Iowa. We've got Iowa 5.5 point home favorites in this game. And look at this total, as you'd expect with Minnesota and Iowa. Look at this total, man. 32.5, the total here in this game with Minnesota taking on Iowa. I'm going to keep my analysis very, very short, very sweet, to the point. You have Minnesota off a bye week, and I'm not saying Minnesota's good. Minnesota isn't good, but they're off a bye week, getting shellacked by Michigan. They have had some tougher games this season. North Carolina and Michigan stand out in particular, tough opponents. They have the bye week, extra time to prepare. I'm no Kali Akmanis fan, but if there's ever a week where, at least he's got extra time to prepare and he is facing a tough defense on the road, we'll see how he fares here. And then on the flip side, it's very simple. Deacon Hill has been atrocious. He's been an abomination at quarterback for Iowa since he took over for an injured Cade McNamara. I ain't laying 5.5 with that at quarterback. I'm not. And Minnesota off a bye week. I don't trust Iowa's offense in this point spread range. Hardly ever. Give me Minnesota in this spot off a bye week plus the points. Connor, what do you think?
Yeah, that's where I'm looking. And this 5.5 has got to cover the last couple of years against Iowa, Minnesota. And look at this total. 32, and I don't think it gets there. It might. I think there'd be a couple busted plays. That's what it's going to have to take. This is how slow and boring this football game will be. Handoff, defense. Give me the points with Minnesota and still lean under.
Yeah, no, and Brian Ferentz is not it. He's done. He's out. He's not going to reach that whatever that mandate is, points per game. What, 24? He's not getting there. He ain't getting there. 6 for 21 for Hill, by the way, against Purdue. 110 passing yards. You know what he was against Wisconsin last week? 6 for 14, 42% completions, 37 passing yards, 37 passing yards, and they're laying 5.5 points in this game. That quarterback is laying 5.5 in this game.
I know, and they're, like I said, they're going to win this game. If you look at their schedule, they're going to win the West.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. It's
crazy. Utterly atrocious offense, and same old shit here with Iowa. All right, Texas Tech, BYU, back to the Big 12. Texas Tech 4.5-point road favorites, 52 the total here in this one. Keep in mind, Texas Tech, Behren Morton, game time decision, it looks like, for Saturday against BYU. So this is already a team that's lost Tyler Shuck at quarterback for the season. Behren Morton's taken over, and now he is listed as a game time decision here for Texas Tech. He got himself injured against K-State last week, and obviously the offense suffered. They lost 38-21 against Kansas State. Thankfully, the game still went over the total, which was good for me there. And it was Jake Strong taking over. Well, Strong in his last name. Strong, not so much in performance. 3 interceptions for Jake Strong against K-State last week after Morton got injured in that game. So really, there was a drop-off, clearly. Obviously, there wasn't much of one. Shuck to Morton. Morton's played well, but Morton to Strong, and Strong did not play well. So there is a little bit more of a drop-off going QB2 to QB3 here for Texas Tech. Meanwhile, you got BYU coming in here off a dismantling at the hands of TCU, 44-11 for TCU in that game. Keaton Slovis was horrendous, and that's what he's going to do against better teams, not play well. I've seen enough of Slovis to know that. They couldn't run the ball. They are back home, and we have seen BYU play a little bit better in Provo. And I don't know if I want to lay points on the road with Tech if Morton's not going to play. But I don't think I have enough faith in BYU to take them either. If Morton suits up, maybe I get involved with Texas Tech. Maybe I get involved in the over, too, because I'll tell you what, that BYU defense got absolutely gashed last week by Texas Christian, TCU. And Josh Hoover was the quarterback, not Chandler Morris, because he was injured. And Josh Hoover, 439 through the air against that BYU secondary. Horrible defense from BYU through the air. Lean Tech, lean over if Morton plays. I'll say that. What do you think here, Con?
Yeah, if Morton, I like the over here, whoever's in. BYU overs have cashed. They just keep cashing. Went back to it last week. It got there, not because of anything they did. You mentioned Slovis was horrible, but they're back home. This is where I want BYU in this game. Especially if Morton doesn't go, I think Strong will throw it around. The interceptions were bad. They were bad on third down. It was just ugly. I think they were like 4-14 or something like that. It just not very good. And K-State just kind of owns them. We talked about it last week, and it happened. But I like the points here. I not only the over, I like BYU +5.
All right, UCLA against Stanford. We've got UCLA 17-point road favorites. 54.5, 55 being the total here in this game. UCLA are they the offense that we can rely on here, laying this kind of number on the road? It's been a inconsistent mess, if you will, so far for Dante Moore at quarterback. And even last week, it's a perfect example. They had a brutal start in that game, and then all of a sudden, second quarter, third, fourth quarter, they get going a little bit in that one. Against Oregon State, but too little, too late. It was a very good offensive performance from Oregon State. DJU through the air played well, and Martinez running the ball, and UCLA had a hard time stopping it. And what do you get from Stanford off one of the more incredible comebacks you'll see? It was a Stanford, let's be real, it was a Stanford comeback / Colorado collapse last Friday night. It was a little bit of both. But what an unbelievable comeback win for Troy Taylor. And Troy Taylor's a good coach. I actually like this hire the more I see it. He's got this group playing hard, playing with good effort every single night. Look, I didn't trust their quarterbacks really, but Ashton Daniels, he had a really good game. He lit it up in the second half. He can run it a little bit. But they're coming off this magnificent comeback win. I really worried, especially for a team like Stanford, where they're a below-average team. I worry when a team has a win like that, the next week they just fall flat like a total brick. And maybe you're going to see that here for Stanford in this game. Not a strong opinion for me as of right now. Either way, side or total. I think actually this could stay under. UCLA's defense, well, last week they struggled, but prior to that, that defense was playing pretty well. We'll see if they can play well again here. What do you think, Con?
The defense, finally went out on the road, a tough place, Corvallis, but also, that's why you got to go Oregon State. We talked about was more. Just would he throw those picks? And he did. He had 3 of them. He looked awful in that game. If he's not good, Stanford's in this game. UCLA is going to go in there and win, but I like 17. I'd like it a little bit over that. I think Stanford can hang around. They get a win. Now they come back home. I'm leaning their way with the points here. Stanford.
All right. We stay in the Pac-12. Probably the game of the week in the Pac-12 here. Utah and USC. We've got USC 6.5, 7-point home favorites here. 56 being the total here in this game. I don't normally love backing Utah on the road. I've said this a bunch of times. Utah on the road is not as easy a decision to make for me as far as backing them. They're off a big-time performance at home against Cal, 34-14. For as good as Mendoza was against the week before for Cal against Oregon State, he struggled a lot more on the road against a really good defense, which doesn't surprise me. Bryson Barnes was efficient, 15-21. Sione Vaki was terrific running the ball for Utah, 158 rushing yards last week against Cal. Can he duplicate that here against USC? That's the question. Trojans, where are their heads at? 48-20 beatdown at the hands of Notre Dame. I mean, one of the worst games Caleb Williams has played, probably the worst. I don't think he's played a worse game than he did last week. 3 interceptions. The O-line was bad, by the way, for USC. And people did say the O-line was, when they finally played a good Notre Dame defensive front, how would they play? And USC he had no time to throw the ball for much of that game, Caleb Williams. And it's not going to get any easier because guess who else has a pretty good defensive front 7? Oh, yeah, Utah. And every year they have a good defensive front 7 under Kyle Whittingham. So it's Utah or nothing for me. I'm not laying 7 with this USC team. The O-line finally faced a good front 7 that could get a pass rush, and they struggled with it. Utah's the similar type of team. They can get a pass rush. I think it's a competitive game. Like I said, I don't like Utah as much on the road, but I might make an exception here and back the Utes getting a full touchdown in this game, even with the likelihood that once again Cam Rising will be out again. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, Cam, I don't know if we're ever going to see him. Maybe. There's just no way. You mentioned the offensive line. The defense is still horrible. You want to lay points with SC. I know they're coming back home. I think that Utah defense will be, which they've gone on the road at times at other places and struggle, but this should be a spot for them. And Caleb Williams will have some success, but I think he'll be running for his life too. The thing is, Utah's going to run it, and they'll have plenty of success doing that against this SC defense. Like, I guess Barnes needs to make a few more plays. Like, he was 15-21 for 128. It was a lot of dink and dunk. And I think, they're going to have to let him off the leash here a little bit because this SC defense isn't very good. Give me the 7 with Utah. They're in this one. And if you keep betting, it got over again with Notre Dame. I mean, it probably gets over. Shit.
Yeah, this is a tough one for me with the total. I'm not as sold on the total. Like 5-1 to the under for Utah, but 6-1.
Yeah, they're an under
for USC. Yeah, I mean it's a clash of So that's why I think it could go either way with the total. But I'm on Utah for sure, especially if it stays put at 7 here in this one. I'm interested getting a full touchdown with Whittingham and this front 7, which again, finally a defensive front. Notre Dame had the capability of disrupting USC's offensive line. And Utah has that same capability, in my opinion, to do that. So this could be another tough day at the office for Caleb Williams. And as we saw, it doesn't matter how good you are at quarterback. When a pass rush gets home as often as it did, you can make even the best quarterbacks look average and ordinary.
Yeah. We saw it the week before, a few games, with Arizona and a few other teams that got there. So, yep.
No doubt. We stay in the Pac-12, Arizona State and Washington. This is another tricky spot, right? Washington off. What a game. What a game. That was one of the best college football games, not only of the season, but in a very long time. Washington and Oregon had it all. It was absolutely spectacular. The play, quality of play was just so good. It was a high level. It was great quarterback play from Bo Nix, and of course, Michael Penix Jr., who was battling through some punishment too. He was taking some shots, and he kept on battling, led them for that go-ahead touchdown. They did need the missed field goal at the end, but man, what a terrific football game that was. Just handicapping 101 says, I don't think I can lay 28 and a half with Washington here off a win like that, off a game like that. But do I trust Arizona State? Like, just because it's a potential letdown spot doesn't mean you automatically bet the opponent. The opponent's got to be somewhat capable, and I don't know if that's Arizona State. And on defense, they're going to have to get stops. And we've seen this team give up 42 to USC in their best offense they played so far this year. 27 to Colorado, and Washington is even better, I think, offensively. I have to put Washington ahead of USC on offense now, based on what I've seen. They are just spectacular, and Michael Penix Jr. just has that knack of throwing the football right where his receiver needs it to be over and over again. His accuracy with the football throwing it is just something else. And the one thing, too, for Arizona State, the run defense hasn't been bad. Their pass defense is the weaker part of that Arizona defense. We'll see how they fare here, but they've been okay. They haven't been great against the run, but the pass, when I look at it, actually their pass defense numbers aren't that great, but the one game they did play a good passing offense. Like I say, you go back to that USC game. What did USC have? 322 yards through the air and a grand total of over 500 yards of offense against Arizona State. That's not what you want to see from Arizona State's defense against probably the next best offense they played this season here with Washington, and on the road as well, having to go to Seattle to play this game. So it's a pass for me from a side perspective. I am worried a little about a mini letdown for Washington, but I don't think the matchup's good enough, and I don't like the underdog enough to take them. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, has Arizona State kind of made the right steps here? Because it seems like Washington could come out a little flat in the first half, but their offense is just so good. It seems like just even with their C game, they'll be okay. It could be up 14 at halftime here. So it's tough. It's a ton of points. It was a great win game, similar to the game last year. We'll get at the end of the show what I want to talk about. But yeah, I think I lean to the points with Arizona State in this game, and I think it'd still get over. I think, Washington's defense, we saw their pass defense. I was talking about it. I think they're all right, but, they gave up 260 through the air. I think Arizona State could have some success. Over. You're on mute. You're on mute.
There we go. Sorry about that. Yeah, Trenton Bourguet, since he's been at quarterback here for Arizona State, they have been a little bit better. His numbers have been respectable here in the two starts he's made against Cal and Colorado. Over 600 passing yards, 64% completions. Solid numbers. So maybe Arizona State can contribute. Washington should do what they do, and that's a score. And they've been, 36, 31, 59, 41. Look at the points they put up. I mean, they're going to get 30s, 40s, and all you need is probably 20 out of Arizona State. And there you go, a good chance to go over the total. So, yeah, I would play over in this game, maybe from
50s. I want to go over because I think they can get in the 60s.
All right. Last game for the Pac-12 section of the show here, Washington State and Oregon. We've got Oregon 20-point home favorites, 60 the total. Oregon, obviously, how do they come out? They either come out fired up and want to run through Washington State, or it's just a crushing, tough, painful loss because they thought they at least tied it up with that field goal. And sure enough, it misses and they fall to Washington. How do they pick up the pieces? Dan Lanning, Bo Nix, and company following that kind of loss. That'll be interesting. Washington State, to me, they have cooled off considerably, I would say, the last couple of weeks here. 25-17 loss to UCLA, which their offense and Cameron Ward got shut down. And then last week against Arizona, they really got shut down. There was no run game. It was an anemic game again from Ward. Fafita at quarterback for Arizona lights it up against Washington State's defense. That's not what I want to see going into Eugene, Oregon. I actually think Oregon does show up here. I would lean to laying the point. Like, I don't like the way things are headed for Washington State. All of a sudden, their defense has come unglued, and their offense, and Cameron Ward was just lighting it up in the first 4 games. And here they are now. They've scored 23 points in the last 2 games combined. If that's their average in this game, they're not covering on the road here at Oregon. So, and Oregon's defense is still, I think, pretty good. Did they play great last week? No, but that's a prolific offense. And I think they have a better defensive effort in them here. I lean favorite. I don't know if I'll get there, though. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't rag on the defense. It's good for, Pac-12. I guess, it's solid. I don't know what's happened to Washington State at all. And you go, like, they don't have a ton of injuries. Like, they just looked horrible. The last few times, can they get right here? This is now a ton of points. They played Oregon tough the last few times, the last few years. I've seen some, watching those games like I do. I kind of want to take the points with Washington State, and that's how bad they've looked. But I think at almost 3 touchdowns, and just as long as Cam Ward, what's going on with him? I got to dig into it a little bit deeper throughout the week, but I'm already looking at the points here, Washington State.
This team can't run the football. This team doesn't overly try to run the football, Washington State, and they've been pass heavy, and you wonder if teams are figuring them out right now. You really have to wonder if they've figured out how to defend Cameron Ward and the Cougars offense, because this is a staggering falling off a cliff for this offense, considering what they did in the first 4 weeks and now what they've done in back-to-back games against UCLA and Arizona. It's staggering to see the decline in the Washington State offense. All right, next up, we've got UCF and Oklahoma. Down back to the Big 12 we go with this matchup. It is Oklahoma, 20-point home favorites here, 65 being the total in this game. That's a lot of points for Oklahoma. Of course, the last time we saw them in action, it was that thrilling win for them over the Texas Longhorns in the Red River rivalry. We'll see how they fare here in this one off a bye week, taking on UCF. UCF, though, destroyed by Kansas, 51-22. They're also off a bye week. Looks like John Rice Plumlee is going to be the starting quarterback here for UCF rather in this game against Oklahoma. The knee injury he suffered against Kansas, but it's not going to be enough to keep him out of this game. So it'll be Plumlee at QB for UCF. I don't buy into the letdown theory for Oklahoma, because the letdown was more likely going to happen last week if they had no bye week. They have a bye week. They can get the exuberance and the jubilation out of their system beating Texas. And I think they're probably going to have a better game in them here against UCF. And to be quite honest with you, the one thing that worries me like crazy for this UCF team is their lack of success stopping the run. It's a real big concern for me here in this game against a team like Oklahoma. Their defense just in general hasn't been very good. So maybe an over in this game, or maybe an Oklahoma team total over. I might be interested in. Oklahoma should be able to move the football. Good offense. Gabriel's played well at quarter. And Gabriel's going to be fired up. Used to be at UCF. He gets to play his old team. Of course, transferred out from UCF to go to Oklahoma. So a little bit of not a revenge spot, but he'll be fired up to put one on UCF. No question about that. Dylan Gabriel for the Sooners. What do you think, Connor?
It's better like that Plumlee's back for UCF, but they can't stop anybody. I'd lean to lay it with Oklahoma, or I was just going to I'd take their team total. I think they can do whatever they want. This defense for UCF, especially on the road, away from home, they kind of play a little bit better. They've been awful, 200 yards on the ground. Oklahoma off the bye. I think they win big.
All right, speaking of winning big, great segue into this next game. Texas and Houston, another Big 12 matchup. Texas 22.5-point road favorite, 60.5 being the total in this game. Look, Dana Holgorsen, this is not your mediocre West Virginia Mountaineers anymore that you're able to beat by the skin of your teeth in a game you got outplayed in, by the way, against West Virginia. You didn't deserve to win that game. You won it because you got a kick return touchdown and a lucky Hail Mary at the end. now you're facing by far, I think, the best team you've played, an angry Texas team after their first loss of the season against Oklahoma, and off a bye week as well. We have evidence of the next best team to Texas that Houston has played this year. The two next best teams were TCU. They lost by 23, and Texas Tech on the road. They lost by 21. This is going to get ugly for Houston, in my opinion. This is if Texas is fired up and they don't let that loss linger. And I think after the bye week, I think Steve Sarkisian can get the defense back on track. Quinn Ewers in the offense, Jonathan Brooks, Adonai Mitchell. I mean, it's a lot of loaded weapons on offense. I think this is Smackdown City, bounce back spot time for Texas. And because they're on the road instead of home, you actually get a little bit of a better number here to take Texas. So I'm going to go a double up here. Texas minus 13.5 in the first half, and also the minus 22.5 for the full game. I definitely think Texas bounces back, and Houston has shown an inability to compete at all with the best teams they've played. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, I think Texas is going to be fired up in this game. There's been some games where they've struggled first half, but this is where I want them here. First half, under 2 touchdowns. I don't trust Houston at all. Their defense is awful. So under 2 touchdowns at 13.5, I take Texas. I think they're pissed. Lay it.
Yeah, no doubt. Still, that defense is very shaky for Houston, and we saw it. They gave up, multiple leads against West Virginia, including what looked like it was going to be the game-winning touchdown until the Hail Mary occurred. But not a good defense. Yeah. They're going to have their issues here, big time.
You touched on the law, 21 to Tech, 23 or whatever it was to TCU. It's like step up, beat down.
No doubt. I think the wrong place, wrong time here, I think, for the Houston Cougars. All right. Mississippi State, Arkansas. We've got Arkansas 7-point home favorites, 49 the total here in this game. Mississippi State, not exactly a team I've been backing. I've been fading them a lot this year. We'll see how they fare here in this matchup against Arkansas. Of course, the Razorbacks, hard-fought effort against Alabama last week, 24-21. The Ole Miss game, they've covered back-to-back as underdogs, losing by 7 at Ole Miss, 3 at Alabama. Not bouncing back because they lost the game straight up, but they've lost 5 in a row coming into this game. But look at this gauntlet, man. BYU, although that was a bad loss, I will say that. Shouldn't have lost to BYU at home. But LSU, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Alabama, it's a pretty tough schedule here that Arkansas has faced. This is a big step down in class now against Mississippi State. I would lean Arkansas here, laying the 7. Mississippi State against the best teams they've played. LSU destroyed them by 27. Alabama beat them by 23. They lost by 7 at South Carolina. I still think Arkansas is better than South Carolina. Yeah, this is a favorite or nothing for me. Razorbacks or pass. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, I've been impressed in Arkansas as a dog hanging around. And after, that first half of just the secondary kind of getting lit up, I thought the defense looked really good in the second half, which they haven't looked great all year. At home, this is a win they get. I'm leaning to lay it with Arkansas in this game. Mississippi State is not very good at all. I had that over. What did they play? Western Michigan a couple weeks ago. I mean, they gave up 28.
Western Michigan. I took Western Michigan plus the points too, and that cashed.
They covered, yeah, and the game went over. They can't stop anybody. Can they, score here? Maybe a little bit, but at under a touchdown or just at a touchdown, I'm leaning Arkansas.
Yeah, Mississippi State 0-5 against the spread versus FBS opponents this year. Their only point spread cover came against Southeast Louisiana. That's it. Against FBS teams, they're 0-5 against the number this year, Mississippi State. I don't like what Zach Arnett did. Why don't you just take out your dick and urinate on Mike Leach's grave while you're at it? Changing this team from air raid offense to this, trying to run the ball more, which Will Rogers fit that air raid system so well, and it's thrown him out of whack too, that quarterback. He's not playing as well because the system changed that this head coach is putting on this team. I don't understand why he's doing it, quite honestly.
I don't get it. And they don't play any defense. They just play off the secondary, way back, and you can just do whatever you want offensively. A little revenge, too. different Mississippi State team beat them 40-17 last year as well.
Yeah.
A little revenge for Arkansas.
Yeah, nothing I like right now from Mississippi State. All right, TCU and Kansas State. We've got Kansas State 6.5-point favorites, 57 being the total here in this one. Man, TCU putting a beat down on BYU, which we talked about earlier, 44-11. Meanwhile, K-State bouncing back from the loss at Oklahoma State to beat Texas Tech, although it benefited them was Baron Morton getting injured in that game, as we talked about, but it was a much better game from Will Howard. Will Howard had a really bad game by his standards against Oklahoma State. Ended up being better in that game, although it ended up being Avery Johnson finishing that game for K-State at quarterback. And if I look at the latest injury report here with Will Howard, it looks like he's good, though. Or he was benched in the second half of that win against Texas Tech. Johnson took over. Do we have a quarterback controversy developing now with Chris Kleiman and this K-State team? Something to monitor. It's pretty shocking he benched him because he's been a long-time quarterback. He didn't play great in the first half and obviously struggled against Oklahoma State. But to actually pull the trigger and bench Will Johnson and put Avery Johnson in instead, or not Will Howard, I should say, and put Avery Johnson in instead, that's a pretty remarkable turn of events and decision there by Chris Kleiman. So keep an eye on this. Will it be Will Howard? Will he get a starting job back, or will it be Avery Johnson at quarterback here for K-State? K-State's definitely tough at home. Money coming in, though, on TCU. And look, you've got to give certainly this kid credit the way he played at quarterback for TCU, taking the spot of the injured Chandler Morris. Josh Hoover was outstanding against BYU. Now, can he keep that going against K-State? We'll see. Money's coming in on TCU. I kind of see why that is. It's now down to 6.5. Maybe over the total in this game. 57. TCU's offense looked great with Hoover. K-State, Avery Johnson gave them a spark on offense. So I might lean to the over a little bit here in this one. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, with Hoover, I mean, he threw it all over this I was waiting on, how he's going to play. It came in and thrown a few picks, and then he gets the start. He still had a few picks. He's got 6 TDs, 4 picks on the year. That's one thing that just don't have big turnovers in this game. But I like TCU on the road. Two teams that they've been tough to figure out a little bit from week to week. But K-State off the big win. You mentioned Howard. I mean, it's rough for him. I don't know if he's going to be starting. We will see. K-State wants to run it. They get over 200 yards a game. TCU is going to be able to throw it because this K-State defense against the pass isn't great. I want the points here with TCU. Hoover, I think, in Manhattan, they're always a little bit better. But I think we do. I don't know. We get over. I lean over. But I think over the touchdown, you take TCU.
All right, Tennessee and Alabama here. Big one in the SEC. We've got Alabama, 8.5-point home favorites. Total here, 47.5 across the board. Tennessee, a nice little 3-game win streak for them after the loss at Florida. They've really bounced back nicely. 3-0 straight up in ATS, beating UTSA, South Carolina, and Texas A&M last week. The defense has really stepped it up and played a lot better as well. Joe Milton hasn't been great still, only 100 yards passing in the win against A&M, but they got a good performance on the ground from Jalen Wright, their terrific running back. Going to be tougher to run the ball here, though. Let's be real, against this Alabama defense where their strength still has been stopping the run. No question. Can Milton beat them through the air on the road in Tuscaloosa? That's the big question. It's also, keep in mind, a big-time revenge spot for Alabama, who got beat by Tennessee last year in Knoxville 52-49. So Alabama has this one circled, there's no doubt. And this isn't Hendon Hooker anymore. This is Joe Milton. You got to trust him on the road, throwing the ball, especially that running game might be, put to the test here by this Alabama run defense. I'd probably lean to Alabama here, laying the number. Don't know if I will, but don't know if the Tennessee offense is going to thrive here on the road. If they can't run the ball, can Milton do it through the air consistently against this Crimson Tide team? That's the question. I'll say this about Alabama's offense. Jalen Milroe, the last 3 weeks, the A&M game especially, Arkansas. Now, the second half, they kind of went to sleep a little bit, but he's still getting better. He is. He's running the ball. He's throwing the ball better now as well. In another solid game, no mistakes, no interceptions against Arkansas last week. I lean Bama here, and then they're going to want this one after losing to Tennessee on the road last year and really killing their chances of being in the playoff last year as well. What do you think here, Connor, with this one, Tennessee, Alabama?
It is a revenge game. One thing, I don't think I've seen enough of Milton. I don't think he can pass. There's
I
just
worry about that
we saw
too.
KJ Jefferson. It's similar. Your guy can make throws, but you saw how many passes are really bad, whether high or low. I think will have some success running it. The Bama defense is good. They're not great, I don't think. And two teams watching that game we had live from the first half to the second. Milroe looked all right, and they just couldn't do anything. The play calls. I know they had about an 18-point lead, something like that, at halftime, but I don't trust them either. So I like Tennessee, the plus 9.5. I wish it was 10. You mentioned last year's game, the revenge. Before that, Alabama just took them to the woodshed, especially at home, years past. But I think this Alabama team still has some issues, on both sides of the ball, especially the opposite side of the ball. Just Tennessee on the road here is a little bit where I pump the brakes, but I lean to the points.
All right, Memphis and UAB. We've got Memphis 5.5-point road favorite, 63 the total. They're betting Memphis here, 4.5 up to 6. This is one move that I don't agree with. I ain't laying points on the road with Memphis. I'm just not doing that. Their offense is pretty good, but their defense really isn't. They got shredded last week by Tulane, 31-21 in that game. Look, UAB has had a rough go defensively. They've given up. I mean, their defense is bad too. 41, 49, 35, 35, 41 points allowed to UTSA last week. But look at the strength of schedule difference. Memphis has played one really good team this year. Actually, two good teams. Tulane's good. Missouri's not bad. But other than that, weak schedule. UAB's fought Tulane as well, but UTSA as well, and Georgia. UAB's been battle tested a little bit more than Memphis has been battle tested. So I know Jacob Zeno and that UAB offense really got bogged down in the second half against UTSA, but this is, I think, a weaker defense. And now they're at home in this game against Memphis. They can bet Memphis all they want, but I see it's gone up to 6. If it goes even higher, hopefully it hits 7 by kickoff. I'll really like UAB if this gets to plus 7 on the Blazers. I like the over as well here. Should see the offenses do pretty well. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, there should be plenty of points and get over. I think Memphis has been a little bit better this year. But one thing, I never lay points with this team, especially on the road. This just is the perfect, they're going to go in there and win by a touchdown. And I know UAB let me down. I had them. I thought they could be in that game. I was just surprised how UTSA's defense and Zeno, it was just rough for them in that second half. I thought they were going to get at least into the mid-30s and be right in that game. So, but I lean UAB here too, and there should be points in this one as well.
All right, we've got Ole Miss and Auburn in the SEC next up. Ole Miss 6.5-point road favorites, 56.5, 57 being the total in that game. I don't think it's a good sign for the Auburn offense that they struggled as much as they did with that LSU defense, which has been hemorrhaging points week in and week out. And it was a big-time struggle for Peyton Thorne throwing the ball. The run game was shut down completely by LSU, and Auburn ends up getting trampled there in that game last week, 48-18 at the hands of LSU. Ole Miss, meanwhile, 27-20 win at home against Arkansas. Now they have to go on the road where they played 2 road games this year. The Tulane game wasn't that impressive. Tulane was down to their backup quarterback, and it took them a while to pull away. And then, of course, they got beaten by 14 at Alabama. But less than a touchdown. I think I would only look at Ole Miss here. I have concerns about Auburn right now. And after some of the offenses Ole Miss has played this year, they actually might find it easier playing Auburn's offense here in this game on the defensive side. They've had to play LSU and Jaden Daniels. They've had to play Arkansas and KJ Jefferson, Alabama. At less than a touchdown, it feels like Ole Miss is still the better of these two teams, and I would lean in that direction here in this game. What do you think here, Conor?
Yeah, it won't be easy, though, I think, going here to Auburn. You know what? Because it was LSU, they scored enough and Peyton Thorne, they couldn't throw it. They just got down and that was it. So that was an issue. I like the under. I think this total's too high. Ole Miss, other than the LSU game, a little bit slower, have played to the under. Auburn wants to run it. I think this total's way too high. I like the under better than the side on this game.
All right, under for Conor in this one. All right, we got 2 games left. South Carolina, Missouri. We stay in the SEC here. Missouri 7.5-point home favorites, 59.5, 60 being the total in this game. Credit to Missouri, man. Great win on the road at Kentucky, and it didn't start well. You know what's funny? They were getting drilled early, and you know how sometimes in one game when things aren't going well, one play can change everything? That fake punt call that they had, and it took Kentucky completely by surprise, and Kentucky was never the same after that. That's the moment Missouri just started to take over, and they dominated that game from that point. It's almost like that play broke the spirit of Kentucky, and they were just never the same. But again, a very good game from the Mizzou offense. It's definitely been Brady Cook's best season at quarterback for them. Now, can we trust them laying a touchdown or more? Back home where they played pretty good football this year, Missouri. But this South Carolina team, I know they're only 2-4, but you look at their results again against Florida. They're right in that game. They lose 41-39, heartbreaker for South Carolina because they led a lot of that game against Florida last week. The defense, though, has been a concern. All right, 30, 41, 41 the last 3 games that they've had, but they beat Mississippi State. They were competitive against Georgia. Let's not forget that. I don't think I'm comfortable laying more than a touchdown with Missouri. I lean South Carolina, but I think I like the total more. I think it gets over. I think Rattler and the South Carolina Gamecocks can score some points. And I think Missouri against the South Carolina defense that has really had some tough times the last few weeks, they're going to be able to move the football with Brady Cook and that offense. So I think over is the best approach for me in this game. What do you think, Conor?
I agree with you. Do you have the weather pulled up?
I will check on that. Missouri, and I'll bring it up right now as far as the weather goes for this game. Let me see. Missouri. All right. And South Carolina here. Let me just SC Missouri. Sunny and moderate wind. So it doesn't look like it's going to be too bad right now.
I have to say, yeah, South Carolina at home. When I saw, it was just weird. It go 2 to a pick 'em. Just like that, all of them seemed like late money bets on Florida. It's like, oh no. And Graham Mertz, 430 yards, 3 TDs. South Carolina has problems on defense, but I think they will be able to score 2. Missouri back here at home, yeah, over the touchdown. This big win. I'd watch that. But I like the over. These defenses aren't great. I think both teams will be able to move the ball. Over the week. Over of the week.
There you go.
Unless LSU, they've been every week, like 12 straight weeks. But
no, that's true. And LSU, again, and even the game last week, mostly because of their offense against Auburn, that ends up going over the total. Speaking of LSU, it's a great segue. It's our final game, Army and LSU. LSU 30-point home favorites, 57.5 the total in this game. There's no way I'm laying 30.5 with LSU. Not in this spot, not after a blowout win against Auburn, not with Alabama on deck. They actually have a bye week on deck, and then they play Alabama, LSU. But this is not the spot I'm laying this kind of number with LSU. And their defense is still shaky, but the one concern here for the main concern for Army is they're so reliant on the run. We know that with the mostly triple option offense that they have. And if there's one thing LSU's done pretty decently this year, they've been better against the run. The pass, they've been gouged through the air, but they are a little bit better against the run. That being said, this is a lot of points. LSU might be, going through the motions after a big bounce back home blowout win against Auburn. Not to mention they had that barn burner of a comeback win against Missouri the week before. So they've had a barn burner win against Missouri, come back from behind to beat the Tigers. They play Auburn last week. They roll through them. If there's ever a time to just exhale and yawn and just go through the motions a little bit and just not be all that locked in and sharp, it's this spot. So I still might grab a 30.5 here with Army in this game. I still might, and especially because they got the bye week and then Alabama on deck. So it's not like there's a great sense of urgency here for LSU. And Army, you look at their results this year, they haven't lost a game by more than this number. They had a 4-point loss at Monroe, 13-point loss at Syracuse, 3-point loss to Boston College, 19-point loss to Troy. So, and look, LSU is better than all those teams, but they got to lose by 31. They might be able to stay inside the number. It's not a great LSU spot. What do you think here, Con?
It is this, I'm not trying to take anything away from Troy. Their defense is good, but the goose egg from Army, it was just horrible.
Yeah.
I think they'll be able to score a couple touchdowns here, even if, LSU's up big. I think if you look at LSU, you don't mess with laying it. You take their team total. They've consistently got into just about the 40s, high 30s every single game. So when team totals come out, I look their way. Yeah, I don't know if I want to take Army. They get 200 yards on the ground. LSU was better last week. Can they get a couple scores? They gave up 160 on the ground still does LSU. So maybe they, get 14 here. So I'm going to wait on this one.
And the one thing that is concerning, and the big reason why I'm leading Army is what Andrew is saying in the chat. LSU might not have enough possessions in this game to cover that kind of number because Army's going to drain the clock, slow pace as can be, shorten the game. That's what they're going to look to do. But I do worry on defense for Army, all that speed and that great athleticism and the arm and the legs of Daniels at quarterback. And I worry if they're going to, about that group being able to contain that because typically the service academies do not match up well against teams with great speed on the perimeter and great athleticism. And LSU does have that. Their defense is shaky, but they've got everything and then some on offense this year. No question about that. All right, great stuff. That is this week's edition of Hitting the Book. Shout out to everyone in the chat. Hit the like button on the way out. 76 live viewers. Another great show in the books. Conor, final thoughts and final words here to wrap up this show before we say goodbye.
Yeah, shout out to the chat as always. Robert Franklin, Andrew G, Rick J, Ronnie. What's up, my man? Rance as always. All the guys in here regularly. TJ, Real Deal Prime. Fat Win. What's going on, my man? You like San Diego? Okay, right on. Shout out to everyone. Cab from earlier. AOD, EQ, Ian. Hit the like button on the way out. And go, after this, once we bounce here in a minute, go watch Sharpie's breakdown of the MLB playoffs. I will try to make it on the live stream tonight with Jimmy. And another week in the books. You need a big week. And if you're looking for college football to talk about your team, go read your local newspaper, your radio station beat writer, because this is a betting show where we go through 35 games on a Monday and break them down. So just putting that out there, as Ian always puts, a betting perspective. So if you want to go through your whole team and what's all going on, go do it that way. All right, that's it.
There you go. A little.
There's a lot of quotes, like where these are cut up small videos on these games. Right. Like, come on.
So public service announcement there, courtesy of Conor Mack. So good stuff there. Another great show. And I'll be on that Monday Night Football live stream for the first half of the game as well as usual for Cowboys and Chargers tonight. So looking forward to that. And yeah, check out Sharpie, the MLB show right now. Walking Dead, AL and NLCS previews for the two games taking place later today. Great stuff. Thanks to everyone for joining us. For Conor Mack, I'm Ian Cameron. Have a great week. Enjoy the college football action. And we'll see you again next Monday, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific for another edition of Hitting the Books. Class dismissed.